Let's be real, everybody. If you were in my shoes, would you wait? It's Romania Black, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I finished volume 1 a couple days ago, and I couldn't wait. I was like, no. I normally wait for the comments to come. I normally do, but there haven't been a lot of like comments I've really needed to mention stuff from lately, and I was wondering, and I was starting to like pile up on stuff from Discord that I wanted to talk about from the feral fandom of this series, and I just was like, today I was like, I could wait a couple more days, look at some comments, or I could just save that for the next week because I probably won't be able to wait then. It's Romania Black, and we are starting volume 2 of Scum Villain Self-Saving System, and I have not looked at the cover yet. I pulled it out of my bookshelf. There's a space you can see. I pulled it out. I didn't look at it, and I've set it on the desk. And I'm not looking at the back cover because I'm saving that for last when we get done with the volume. So, but things went off the rails last week. Things went off the rails. The author's here. The author's a character in the story. They're playing Shen QingQiu. They're here. And they're with Shen QingQiu, and both of them are trying now to save themselves because in the OG story, Mo Beijun, who we'll talk about Mo Beijun in a second, apparently kills Shen QingQiu in the original novel, and so now Shen QingQiu is like, don't want to die, so he wants to save himself. Shen QingQiu believes that, what can he do now? Because Luo Binghe has been not only thrust into the abyss, but stabbed and thrust into the abyss, which was even worse than the OG. So he believes that he's doomed, but he has some kind of plan with this sundew moon mushroom that's going to somehow save him. I wanted to also read ahead because I'm so terrified of spoilers, because at this point I've not been spoiled of plot elements to come. So I'm really excited to dive into this second novel because it's literally no man's land. Who knows? I don't. So I'm really, really excited by that. But I've got some feral fandom things I want to talk with you all about, and I want to open up and look at this cover. I haven't opened up the file yet for the digital version of this web novel because Reiki, who got me those files, thank you, Reiki, told me that as soon as I open up, it's going to open up and start with the cover. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to pick up this novel, and we're going to look at the cover of this volume now. I've had it on the bookshelf, and you can just see the spine, so I'm like, it's green and red, which are Luo Binghe and Shen QingQiu's colors, so that seems clear, but looking at the spine, oh, there's the demon sign. So we had the fan of Shen QingQiu last volume, and now we have Luo Binghe's demon marker. Oh! Ooh! Oh, is that the sword? Oh! So there's cherry blossoms, like with Shen QingQiu, and then there is Luo Binghe holding, I'm assuming that is Shenmo, the sword that's supposed to like let him conquer, and there's all like the waves of demonic chi coming off of it. I've got like dust off the cover. It's got dust on it. But yeah, it almost looks like, this is so fascinating to me because it looks like Luo Binghe is like almost driven mad by his anger, but then Shen QingQiu is like caressing his neck and like holding him tenderly. So I'm like, is this when they meet up? Is it gonna be that we're gonna make predictions based on this cover that Luo Binghe has been like taken over by his demonic chi, and Nightmare, aka Mengmo, is trying to like encourage him to hurt Shen QingQiu, and he just can't do it when he actually comes down to it because Shen QingQiu is the person that he loves. I don't know. There were a few little images on the inside of the first volume. Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, it's him like lunging forward at him. Is there any more? Oh, there he is at the tomb. Yep, thinking of little Luo Binghe who's growing up. It's supposed to be 5 years, right? It's supposed to be 5 years. When he comes out of training to start his reign of terror as the protagonist, right? So before we get started on this story, and I'm so freaking excited, I cannot begin to tell you all, we're going to be looking at chapters 31 through 33 today to start out, because that's a nice nearly 40-page chunk. I feel like that's enough. we're going to see. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the Feral fandom because I've been very excited. I've been very excited ever since we found out that Mobe June is going to be in the story. The Discord has been like, oh, Mobe June, so we can share some Mobe June art, can't we? Which is really exciting because I'll be honest, I intentionally don't have a lot of Scum villain stuff on my feed because I don't want to see it because I don't want to be spoiled. I have Heaven Official's Blessing and Modao Zushi stuff all over my social media everywhere, which is good because that will distract me. But this piece of artwork shared by Pancake, I have a theory based upon it that a theory that just came to me as I looked at this image. One, I want to say that I absolutely love how Shen QingQiu is drawn there when he's like trying to hold Luo Binghe back, being like, hey, this guy has big old titties. Maybe you shouldn't mess with him. And Luo Binghe is like, I don't care about boobs. And then of course, he gets thrown away. But that's the first thought. I like Shen QingQiu and how he looks there. Mobe June, in the Dongwall after credit scene, he had like the white hair and the blue eyes, which I thought looked very pretty. All of the other art everyone has shared does not look like the pretty Dongwall. He looks like a manly man. Like he has guests on big old ditties. He is like ready to go. He looks like he's ate a bear. It's not man versus the bear. He ate the bear and then came to be your man. So that is where we're at with him and his character. I'm living for it. He's a very rugged, manly man, this Mobe June, but there's something kind of pretty about him. He's a very interesting mix here. But what I'm getting at is looking at this image and seeing Shang Qinghua, who is a very kind of, he looks like a side character, right? He has like the little brown hair and the little bun. It's not like the long flowy hair like all the other guys have. He looks kind of, I don't want to say the word pathetic, but he looks like a side character. Like if Mobe June is Gaston, then Shang Qinghua in the scene is LeFou, right? But here's my thing. The way that he's kind of like standing behind Mobe June and kind of blushy, I was wondering this last week, and now this fan art makes me almost think it's a thing, is last week I was like, okay, Shang Qinghua and Shen QingQiu don't want to be killed by Luo Binghe and his minion, Mobe June. Is this story setting up like a double date thing where it's setting up for Shen QingQiu and Luo Binghe to be a couple and Shang Qinghua to be paired up with Mobe June? Instead of getting killed by him, he could get slaughtered by him in a different way that involves something that, when you know what they say, a man that has big old ditties, it's probably proportional. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. If Shen QingQiu gets something out of all this at the end of it all, why can't Shang Qinghua get some giant minion dick? I mean, I don't know. Off the rails, y'all. We're off the rails. We're in an airplane shooting towards the sky. We're off the rails, and we're not even 5 minutes into this reaction. We haven't even we're 10 minutes in. We haven't even cracked the cover, right? I'm just saying, I feel, my theory is that Shang Qinghua is going to end up with Mobe June. That's my theory. Him and that big, manly, obsidian sword. Anyway, then this was shared, which I thought was absolutely, Timu Narwhal shared this. It's a meme from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but they've altered it for this. This is how I feel about Shen QingQiu. It said, in the Scum villain self-saving system, Shen QingQiu can't remember much about Luo Binghe's female harem, but remembers every detail about the monsters. This is because A, he's gay, B, he's a monster fucker, C, he's asexual, or D, all of the above. And the answer to me is all of the above. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'm living. So yes. Then I forget who shared these, but this is some of the Russian illustrations for the Russian edition. Oh, this artist, whoever they are, I am officially in love and obsessed with how they draw Shen QingQiu. I mean, our dare officer, Qingyan up there, he looks great. He looks great. He looks like he does in the English translation of the novel as well. They got his features down too. kind of soft and broody man. But Shen QingQiu looks like such a peacock in that when he's like, oh, get me up. I was transmigrated to this body. How inconvenient, as he has perfect bedhead. I mean, but this one got me. It's from the Dream Realm scene where Shen QingQiu with his very heterosexual wrists is just sitting there being like, hey, it's okay. I'm here for you. And Luo Binghe was like taken away from all. You can kind of see if you look up close, it looks like all of the nightmares that Luo Binghe has had, and they're all shattered because Shen QingQiu is there. I live for how this artist drew them. I am just obsessed. The expressions, I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Then, because this is the Feral Fandom, these are the two funny picks of the week. One, I almost called Anime Annie out on the Discord because I saw this image, and it is of Yu Qingyan as Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. And I looked at that and I saw, because the tweet says, here is Yu Sidyon commission. And when I saw Yu Sidyon, I was like, is this a spoiler? Is this a new character? Why y'all just showing art of a new character? No, it's Sidyon because it's Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. Yeah. Yep, you could tell that I was out of it that day because I was like, no, everything's fine. But yeah, no, so I thought that was really funny. And then this one cracked me up so much. It's from Tumblr, and it's of Shen QingQiu, and he's like, what a wonderful, perfect, heterosexual disciple I have. And meanwhile, there's Luo Binghe behind him, like imagining them violently making out. And I was like, I hope my one fear going into volume 2 is that Luo Binghe is going to try to kill him. And I think there's going to be some misunderstanding. I think there's going to be some misunderstanding because he was thrown into the abyss by Shen QingQiu, and he doesn't know that Shen QingQiu didn't want to do it. So obviously the fog of misunderstanding is going to be very complicated. And it wouldn't be MXTX without some angst, y'all. But I'm honestly thinking at this point, I think these two might end up having the most angst out of any pairing MXTX has done. And that's just me saying that. I'm not going to get into reasons. We'll have to get further into the story. But just based on this first volume alone, I was like, oh, it's angst city here. And I'm not used to that in my MXTX couples. I'm used to the angst coming from other avenues. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to see where this goes. But I'm so excited, y'all. I cannot tell you. I've been waiting patiently the last couple days, being like, oh no, it's fine. I'll just wait. It'll be okay. And then today I was like, no, it's a little bit late at night, but I was like, I gotta bust open the episode and we gotta do this because it needs to happen. So thank you all so much. I'm so excited to be diving in to volume 2 and seeing what we get. We're going to look at chapters 31 through 33 of Scum Villain's self-saving system. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. Chapter 6 or part 6. Jinlan. I don't know if that's a person or a place. Chapter 31. Oh! 3 years went by in the blink of an eye. Now we said 5 years supposedly, but the story may be off, right? Because Shen QingQiu thinks he has all the time in the world when the book is like, no, you don't. So, So 3 years. So that would put Luo Binghe at a legal age. During these 3 years, other than occasionally asking Liu Qingge for assistance in clearing his meridians to treat his poison, requesting medicinal prescriptions from Mu Qifeng, and briefly visiting Qingjing Peak to arrange leveling missions for his disciples, Shen QingQiu spent most of his time wandering about the outside world. Interesting. He passed the days leisurely until an urgent notice from Yu Qingyang arrived to suddenly summon him back to Sang Zhang Mountain. As the Qijing Peak disciples had seen nary a shadow of their peak lord in such a long while, for his return, they gathered at the mountain gates well ahead of time to welcome him. As soon as they saw Shen QingQiu steadily climbing the mountain steps, they all flocked towards him, clothes rustling. Which is so interesting to me because early on in the story, we kind of developed the idea from the OG story that the original flavor of Shen QingQiu was not liked by anybody in the clans. And so now we see how Shen QingQiu's kindness has, in this version, kind of made him appreciated and liked and able to have this peaceful existence amongst them. But the one leading them, Ming Fan, had by now become a lanky young man. Though you couldn't say he was extraordinarily handsome, his features could still be considered neat. Anyhow, the sharp mouth and sunken cheeks he'd had in his youth were no more, and gone was that petty cannon fodder face that had been so obvious at a single glance. Oh, nice. I like that he's grown up. He looks, I guess, the Dongwa made him very bulky, so I guess that's not the case. I hope that they show us a picture of him in the actual translation and know what the artists depict for him, because I have a hard time picturing what Ming Fan looks like. The Dongwa gives like this kind of cannon fodder look, and so, but the novel description and the Dongwa don't exactly match up, so I'm curious what description we get for him. Even more striking was Ning Yingying, who'd become a lovely young lady with a splendid figure. Upon seeing Shen QingQiu, she rushed over and grabbed his arm, pulling him up the heaven-ascending stairs. While being greeted by a sweet-smelling maiden was indeed a wonderful thing, Shen QingQiu unfortunately couldn't enjoy it, especially because Ning Yingying had developed quite nicely. No longer was she that dainty and delicate little girl of the past. Sometimes her chest would accidentally brush against him. In fact, it did so until Shen QingQiu, face still expressionless, was streaming with cold sweat. He once again thought of those long chain of posts in Proud Immortal Demon Sway's comment section, the ones demanding Shen QingQiu's castration. So that comes from a couple fronts. One, it's the idea that he doesn't want to give off the wrong impression because he feels bad that he knew what Shen QingQiu had done with her in the original novel, and he's like, I don't want that to happen, I don't want that to happen, I don't want that to happen. But also, he's not interested in her. There's a very asexual vibe to this comment, to this paragraph, because, like, I'm on that spectrum, and I very much appreciate the aesthetic appeal of people. Like, when I think they're attractive, I'm like, oh, you're really attractive, you're really beautiful, and you look really great, and you have a great aesthetic. But I don't want to do anything with that. I just like looking. It's like, look, don't touch. I'm like, I just want to look at you, I don't want to do anything. And so I feel kind of that's how Shen QingQiu is. He's like, he appreciates that she's beautiful, but he in no way, shape, or form wants to do anything with her. And he feels even more guilty because he's the one that got onto this character for getting with her, and he's like, I don't want that to happen. So that's really interesting. Oh, Shizun, you're always away from the mountain, Ning Yingying said, cutely vying for his attention. Your disciples all miss you so much. This master has also missed you all, Shen QingQiu said affectionately. That's not right, he was thinking. Shouldn't the one you miss be Luo Binghe? Why are you thinking about a scum villain? As one of Luo Binghe's wives, weren't you originally supposed to suffer 5 continuous years of sleepless nights and lack of appetite, becoming all emaciated and stricken with grief? Why does it look like you've become plumper instead? Well, because Shen QingQiu has become the wife that's stricken with grief, except he's been fighting off that grief by doing all of these other things. But that's interesting to know that she originally was like grief-stricken and emaciated, waiting on him. But no, Shen QingQiu's kindness has let her and the others all appreciate him. The disciples escorted Shen QingQiu to Chongding Peak. In Chongding Peak's main hall, 11 peak lords had already sat down. 1 or 2 trusted disciples stood behind each peak lord, with the exception of Liu Binghe. He's like, I don't need nobody. Traditionally, Bison Peak's modus operandi was a hands-off shepherd style of education. Everyone trained on their own. The peak lord would occasionally pop up to beat up a bunch of disciples, but other than that, they generally wouldn't teach anything else. This continued until a disciple could fight off their master, at which point the master handed over the title of peak lord. Thus, Liu Binghe naturally didn't have any trusted disciples. He's like, I'm too good. I'm too good. You all can't beat me, so I guess I'll just keep my job. Shen QingQiu greeted everyone in turn and then sat in the second seat. But also that makes sense because Liu Binghe was supposed to be dead at this point of the story. There wasn't supposed to be any disciples taking over for him because he wasn't there. And now it's like nobody can take over for him because he's there. Shen QingQiu greeted everyone in turn and then sat in the second seat, which was for Qi Jinping, while Ming Fan and Ning Yingying stood behind him. Across from him were Shan Zhu Peak's Qi Qingqi and Liu Mingyan. Now, of course that would be her disciple, yeah. Yu Qingyang had yet to announce the start of the meeting, so Shen QingQiu opened and shut the folding fan in his hand, playing with it while he looked around at all the peak lords and their disciples. He found himself thinking that if Luo Binghe were here, no one else would be standing behind him. Neither would there be any question as to who was the most outstanding disciple of Sangzhong Mountain sect's next generation. His thoughts were still running wild when Yu Qingyang spoke. Does everyone know of Jinlan City? I've heard a little about it, said Shang Qinghua. Of course he'd be here. It's located in the Central Plains, where the two great rivers, Lo and Hang, met. Or is it Hung? The city values trade. It's said to be quite prosperous. Chu Qingyang nodded, correct. Jinlan City is accessible from all sides by both land and water, so merchants from all over have always gathered there. But 2 months ago, Jinlan City shut its gates. Not only are the gates impassable, not even letters can be relayed. A healthy, thriving trade city shutting its gates with no warning was like a financial center abruptly breaking off all relations with other branches. It was illogical. There absolutely had to be more to it. Shen QingQiu lifted the teacup by his hand and scraped at the tea leaves on the surface. Zhaohua Monastery is nearest to Jinlan City, and my impression was that they share a very close relationship. If something did happen, the masters of the temple would have realized something was wrong. Correct, Yu Qingyang said. 20 days ago, a merchant from Jinlan City escaped the city via a waterway and rushed to the Zhaohua Monastery to cry for help. If he was using the word escaped, it seemed the situation was genuinely serious. The entire hall grew solemn. That middle-aged man was the owner of Jinlan City's first weapons shop. Over the years, he had often gone to Zhaohua Monastery to pray and burn incense, so quite a few of the temple's monks knew him. When he arrived, he was swathed entirely in black cloth, with only half of his face exposed. He was already wholly exhausted by the time he reached Zhaohua Monastery, and he collapsed on the mountain steps as he told them repeatedly that there was a terrifying plague within the city. The monks guarding the mountain immediately carried the man into the main hall and reported the event to the head abbot. But by the time the head abbot rushed out with several other masters, it was too late. He died? Asked Liu Qingge. The merchant had by then decayed into a skeletal state. Hadn't Yu Qingyang just said that the man had exhausted himself by the time he reached the monastery gates? How could he have become a skeleton in the blink of an eye? Shen QingQiu muttered, Shizun said that the merchant was swathed in a black cloth. From head to toe? Precisely. During the wait, a monk tried to help him remove the black cloth. However, whenever they touched him, he wailed in terrible pain, like his skin and flesh were being ripped off, so they didn't dare remove it by force. The masters of Zhaohua Monastery were deeply disturbed, and after discussion they sent Master Wu Qin and several Buddhist elders to investigate that very night. As of today, they've yet to return. Compared to Shen QingQiu and his cohort, the masters of the Wu generation were uniformly higher in seniority, and their cultivation wouldn't be lacking either. Hence, Shen QingQiu was a bit flabbergasted. Not a single one came back? Yu Qingyang solemnly nodded. Huanhua Palace and Tianyi Temple have also sent 10 odd disciples each. They met with the same result. No one returned. 3 of the 4 major sects had been dragged into this mess, so naturally Sangzhong Mountain couldn't passively observe. No wonder Yu Qingyang had sent an emergency summons. Indeed, Yu Qingyang said, with no other choice, our fellow cultivators from other sects sent Sangzhong Mountain an urgent letter with an emissary, pleading for our assistance. We will certainly lend it. However, this is a serious situation. I'm afraid there may be petty ne'er-do-wells or other races fanning the flames to stoke this incident, stirring up havoc. Some of us will go, but some must stay behind to guard the peaks. In other words, to prevent a situation like the incident with Sha Hualing when they'd been completely vulnerable. Needless to say, other races could only refer to the demon race. Liu Qingge was the first to say, Baizan Peak is willing to escort Mu Shidi to the city. Since there was a plague, Chanshan Peak's Mu Qingfang definitely had to go. Shen QingQiu looked at these two, one who was responsible for making his medicine, and the other responsible for clearing his meridians. Both were leaving, and Shen QingQiu didn't have a protagonist halo with which to protect himself. What if there was an unexpected accident? This was really too concerning. How could he not do his part and watch over them? Oh, yeah, because he's like, it's interesting that Shen QingQiu doesn't know this part of the book. Doesn't know this is a thing. This is new. But then it's all new, right? Or has he just forgotten the book? I guess we'll find out. So he hurriedly added, well, QingQiu is willing to go as well. My original plan was for you to watch the mountain, said Yu Qingyang. Of course Shen QingQiu knew how to deal with him. All he needed to do was endlessly pester Yu Qingyang. Well, there's no need for Zhangmin Shizong to think me so fragile, even if QingQiu is untalented. He knows a few things about demons. If they really are the ones making mischief, I can still be of some assistance. The Walking Demon Encyclopedia. Both the original and current flavor could definitely live up to this title. After all, there was that stack of records and ancient books in the back of Qijing Peak's bamboo house, the same ones that hundreds of generations of peak lords had to read in full before they were allowed to succeed the position. Yu Qingyang thought for a while. If he let Shen QingQiu go with Liu Qingge and Mu Qingfang, it would be far easier for Shen QingQiu to suppress the without a cure poison still within his body. Also, if they got into a fight, the Baizan Peak Lord could protect him. Therefore, in the end, everyone was divided into 3 groups. The Liu Shen Mo trio would clear the way as the vanguard. They would go to Jinlan City first to investigate. The second group would wait outside and act in accordance with their report, and the third group would stay and keep watch on Sangzhong Mountain. The situation was urgent, so there was no time to leisurely take a carriage or boat. Though Shen QingQiu disliked flying on his sword, he knew that at a time like this, he needed to keep up with everyone else's momentum. Interesting that he doesn't want to fly on a sword anymore, or doesn't care for it when, back at the start of this, he was like, why do we have to take horse carriages? And now we know he kind of maybe gets motion sick from it. Interesting. Thus, the trio flew out on their blades. Before half a day had passed, Shen QingQiu gazed downward from above the clouds, took a deep breath, and yelled to the other 2 sect siblings, "The Lo and Hong River Junction is right below us." When they looked down from a great height, they indeed saw the 2 rivers meeting each other like a winding pair of endless thin silver ribbons. The water sparkled under the sunlight, akin to a haphazard dance of silver scales. One of the 2 rivers was the one that Luo Binghe had been placed into after he was born, left to drift downstream, the Lo from which his surname derived. The trio chose to descend at a wide and level hilltop. From there, they could faintly see the curling eaves of a far-off Jinlan city, its tightly closed gates, and the raised drawbridge. I wonder if Lo, since this is the river that he was born or named after, I wonder if Lo's going to show up early and he's been killing people with his demonic chi. I don't know. Shen QingQiu lowered the hand with which he'd shaded his eyes. Why didn't we fly straight into the city? In the past, at Jinlan City's governor's request, the Zhaohua Monastery cast an enormous barrier covering their airspace, Mu Qingfang explained. It prevents immortal swords or anything with spiritual or demonic chi from passing through. They'd be forced to veer off course. Shen QingQiu had personally witnessed the Zhaohua Monastery's barrier casting abilities with the group of barrier masters employed by the VIPs at the Immortal Alliance conference. If they ever ranked second, no one would dare claim first, so Shen QingQiu didn't ask any further questions. Since they couldn't descend by air and couldn't enter through the gates, there had to be some other means to ingress. As it turned out, Yu Qingyang had briefed Mu Qingfang about the situation in detail, and he guided the other 2 through a forest. From within the shade of the trees, there came the murmur of flowing water. That sound emerged from a low cave. Mu Qingfang waved the others over. There's an underground river here. It leads into the city. Shen QingQiu understood. That weapons merchant escaped through here? Mu Qingfang nodded. Several merchants who participate in black market dealings use it to meet or smuggle goods through it. Not many people know this route, because the weapons merchant had a good relationship with several Zhaohua monastery masters. He once disclosed a few things to them. The cave entrance was covered in vines and stood only as tall as their chests. They had to stoop to enter. After walking for a while, they finally felt the ceiling rise, and the sound of flowing water began to gurgle. Several battered, worn-out boats were anchored by the riverbed. Shen QingQiu chose a slightly better boat that at least didn't leak, then flicked his fingers. The lamp hanging at the bow flared with light. After looking left and right, he only found one oar. Shen QingQiu made a gesture of request toward Luo Binghe. We'll be going against the current, so rowing into the city will require the person among us with the best arm strength. Shidi, if you please. With a dark expression, Luo Binghe took that long, thin boat oar and diligently began to use it as a punting pole. With each stroke, the boat leapt forward an incredible distance. The lamp at the bow creaked and swayed jerkily. Shen QingQiu pulled Mu Qingfang over to sit down and glanced at the glittering water by the boat. He could even see several fish happily swishing their tails as they swam by. This water is so clear, he said idly. Right after he said this, something much larger drifted along after the swimming fish. Face down in the water was a corpse. I don't know. I'm curious about a couple things going into this. One, is the city dead? Are they all just dead? Two, what has caused this plague? Three, why does Shen QingQiu not seem to know anything about it? I figured him and Shang Qinghua would like talk about this before they went on this journey, but he doesn't seem to understand what's going on. But the system's turned off, so how could he know? And three, is this not something that happened in the original book? He hasn't talked any about it yet, so I'm curious if he's just waiting to see if this is a plot line. But so far it doesn't seem to be, so okay. Chapter 32. Shen QingQiu shot upright in his seat. Well, fuck, a floating corpse! I just said this water's so clear and you reward me by drifting over a floating corpse? Do you have to be so heavy-handed when you slap my face? Luo Binghe used the oar to hook the floating corpse and flip it over. It was actually another skeleton. They hadn't noticed earlier because its entire body, including its head, was swathed in black cloth. Also, as noted, it had been floating face down. Mushidi, do you know if this world has a kind of plague that can make a person instantaneously decay into a skeleton? Shen QingQiu asked. Mu Qingfang shook his head. It's unheard of. Since they were moving against the current, they would be pushed backwards unless they kept advancing. Having stayed still for so long, their little boat had already moved a distance back. Luo Binghe picked up the oar again, and after a moment he spoke. There's more ahead. I don't want them to touch them or be near them. Like, the idea of plagues, I'm like, should you guys be wearing masks? How are you going to avoid this? What is happening? Sure enough, 5 or 6 more floating corpses drifted towards them from up ahead, one after the other. All of the skeletons were swathed in black cloth, just like the first. So is it the cloth causing it? When Shen QingQiu fell deep into thought. While he did that, Luo Binghe abruptly stabbed the long oar into a nearby stone wall. The thin and brittle bamboo actually stuck straight into the solid, seamless stone, and this stabilized the boat, fixing it into place. Shen QingQiu also sensed something was wrong, and he sprang to his feet. Who is it? A sound of hurried breathing came from the dark depths before them. The lantern at the prow of the boat faintly illuminated a human silhouette. Then they heard a youth's voice say, Who are you? What are you doing sneaking around in this underground river? Well, you're here too, I'd ask you the same, said Shen QingQiu. Though he stood on a little broken-down boat, between his teal robes, black hair, and the long sword hanging at his waist, not to mention his every movement so calm and composed, he still possessed quite the immortal's demeanor. Shen QingQiu had by now become an experienced poser, and had managed to put his own spin on the badass act. As expected, the youth hadn't anticipated someone so high and mighty. He balked for a long moment before shouting, You should leave! No one is allowed into the city! Luo Binghe humphed. Well, you? Who could you keep away? There's a plague in Jinlan. If you don't want to die, then get out. Young man, we're here precisely for that reason, Mu Qingfang said gently. When they refused to leave, the youth yelled angrily, Do you not understand human speech? Hurry and get out, or else I won't be so polite. Before he finished speaking, he was attacking them with a spear, ferocious like a tiger and heartily intimidating. Liu Qingge let out a disdainful laugh, and he pulled the bamboo oar out of the wall. With a flick of the pole, the youth was sent flying into the river. Yet the boy continued to spit and curse, even while splashing about in the water. "Should we fish him out?" said Shen QingQiu. "What for? He's young and full of energy. Let's go." Liu Qingge continued to push them forward. "I know who the kid is!" The trio exited the underground river, and the illicit boat drifted back into the darkness along with the current. The exit was at the city's most overgrown pond, and not a single person was around. After they walked towards the center of the city for a while, out of nowhere, a set of footsteps caught up to them from behind. I was going to say the bedraggled youth charged forward and yelled at them, flustered and annoyed. "I told you not to enter the city! What use is it to have you here? So many people have already come, saying they're going to save us from the plague. Head monks and big shot Taoists, Hua Palace, whoever. In the end, none of them were able to leave. You're looking for death." So this young man had ambushed them in the dark with their best interests in mind. "Well then, since we've already entered, what do you think we should do?" Shen QingQiu asked. "What else can you do?" the youth replied. "Follow me and don't turn around. I'll take you to the old monk." The trio had no objections. None of them were familiar with Jinlan City, so of course it was best to have a guide to stop them from any accidental detours. Shen QingQiu looked down and asked, "Young man, what is your name?" The youth puffed up his chest. "My name is Yang Yishan. I'm the son of the owner of the Jinzi weapons shop." Was it possible he was referring to the weapons merchant who had risked death to bring word to the Zhao Hua monastery in search of aid? As Shen QingQiu praised the youth, Liu Qingge asked, "What are you looking at?" "The way I see it, this child can exchange a few blows with you and has a pretty good temperament," he replied. "Both traits are hard to find. He's a promising talent." "What does that matter? I don't take disciples. Too bothersome." "Oh, is he a Zhongcheng equivalent? What are you doing, Liu Qingge? Come on now. Come on, take yourself a disciple. Let's go." "Don't tell him he's an orphan, though." As they walked into the main part of the city, more and more pedestrians began to appear. But this more was only in comparison to the previous empty streets. At most, there were only 3 or 4 silhouettes per street, and all were buried in black cloth from head to toe, their movements hasty, like birds startled by a bough or fish slipping through a net. The Jinzi weapons shop was appreciably large. It sat on the widest main road and occupied 4 storefronts in a row, all connected together into one store. It even had an inner courtyard, inner hall, and a cellar. Master Wu Qin was in the cellar. He lay on the bed, a blanket covering his lower body, and as soon as he saw the Sang Mountain sect's reinforcements, he began to chant Amitabha. Amitabha. What is it? Amitabha. Amitabha! Y'all know how this goes. "Master, the circumstances are urgent. Let's skip the pleasantries," said Shen QingQiu. "What is this plague raging through the Jinlan city? Why do you enter but never leave without even sending a message? And why is everyone wrapped in black cloth?" Wen Qu forced a smile. The answer to all of Master Shen's questions is in fact one and the same. As he said this, he lifted the blanket covering his lower body. Shen QingQiu stiffened. Underneath the blankets, there lay only a pair of thighs. From the knees down, everything had disappeared. Where there should have been a pair of calves, there was nothing. "Who did this?" Liu Qingge asked stonily. Wu Qin shook his head. "Not who." Shen QingQiu was puzzled. Well, if not who, then when did they disappear on their own? Unexpectedly, Wu Qin nodded. This pair of legs did indeed disappear on their own. His legs were still swathed in black cloth from the knees up. Wu Qin reached out, straining to unwrap them, but Mu Qingfang hurried to help. "This may make everyone a bit uncomfortable," Wu Qin warned. The black cloth was unwrapped layer by layer. When Shen QingQiu saw what lay inside, his breath stopped. "Great Master, you call this a bit uncomfortable?" The place that should have been Wu Qin's thighs had thoroughly festered, the skin necrotized into a mass of rotten flesh. After the black cloth was untied, a terrible stench came from them in waves. "This is Jinlan City's plague?" Shen QingQiu asked. "Yes," said Wu Qin. When this disease first develops, red patches appear in a small area. After 3 to 5 days on the short end, half a month on the long, the red patches expand and fester. After another month, the rot advances down to the bones. In order to delay the progression, one must swathe oneself in black cloth and avoid exposure to light and the elements. Well, no wonder everyone in the city had bundled themselves up until they were black mummies. If the disease develops over a month's time, why did Yang Xingzhen, the fellow who went to notify Zhaohua Monastery, instantly decay into a skeleton? Shen QingQiu asked. A sorrowful expression appeared on Wen Qin's face. This old monk is ashamed to say that he only later discovered that the infected patients can survive for approximately a month, as long as they stay within Jinlan City. But if after they are infected they go to a certain distance away from the city, the disease's progression accelerates. My two Shidi discovered this the moment after they rashly tried to leave the city and return to the monastery. No wonder one could enter and no one could leave. Well, what is the origin of this disease? Liu Qingge asked. How is it transmitted? Wu Chen could only sigh. This one is ashamed. We have passed a great deal of time in the city, yet we have not made any progress towards a solution. We do not know the illness's origin, nor its method of transmission. We do not even know if it can be transmitted. Mu Qingfang was shocked. What do you mean? Shen QingQiu realized something. Observe the weapon seller's son. He's been taking close care of Master Wu Chen for a long time, yet he wears not a strip of black cloth. His skin is still intact, and he's quite healthy. If this is truly a plague, wouldn't it be strange that Master Wu Chen has not infected him? Precisely, said Wu Chen. This one is terribly sorry to let you all be trapped here. You only intended to save people from the disaster. There's no need for apologies, said Shen QingQiu. He noted that Mu Qingfang was absorbed in investigating the festered parts of Wu Chen's leg, like he couldn't smell a hint of the stench. Mu Shidi, have you made any discoveries? Can you create a medicine to treat it? Mu Qingfang shook his head. This doesn't seem like a plague, but rather like... He looked at a few people around him. This humble one needs to examine more patients before he can come to a definite conclusion. Shen QingQiu exited the cellar, whereupon he saw the weapon seller's son heading back the way in which he came in a rage, a long sword slung over his shoulder. He smiled as he asked, Young master, what is happening? Someone entered the city again, Yang Yizhuan huffed. Those people from Hua, wherever, are the most useless. They're just rushing to their deaths. Huanhua Palace must have sent more aid, i.e. additional victims. But as the boy's face was puffed up like a steam bun, Shen QingQiu couldn't help teasing him a bit. Young man, your martial skills are rather good. Did you have a teacher? Yang Yizhuan ignored him. Let me tell you, you should go find that Gege who tossed you into the water today. Shen QingQiu continued. He's most formidable. Fighting a few rounds with him will be more effective than learning from anyone. When he heard this, Yang Yizhuan abandoned Shen QingQiu and ran. Having found Liu Qingge a sticky new problem, Shen QingQiu was in quite a joyful mood. In the middle of a plague city! In a joyful mood! Okay, Shilian! Oh my god. He walked a few more steps and turned around a corner, but when he saw the scene before him, he stopped in his path. The city was devoid of life, and the gates of every home was shut tight. Many of those who had been homeless in the first place had nowhere to go, so they could only gather on the street. Before, when carriages and horses had streamed through the streets, people coming and going, those forsaken had been afraid to show their faces. But with now everything so empty, they became fearless. They'd set up a big iron cauldron and piled firewood underneath it, and they were boiling a churning pot of water as some plucked the feathers off a chicken stolen from who knew where. Each person was wrapped tightly in bundled layers of black cloth, but upon seeing Shen QingQiu, who was extremely conspicuous in the midst, they were not the least bit shocked. Instead, they regarded him like they would a corpse. After all, these days they had seen every kind of impressive-looking cultivator sweep into the city, claiming they would save the rabble. And had they been of any use, they died even faster than the local drifters. The cook rapped on an iron pot, "Soup's done, come get your share!" Many of the drifters lying nearby who were picking at their lice rolled to the feet and gathered around, bowls in hand. This plague had disrupted the rhythms of the entire city's day-to-day, so this spontaneous communal meal was liable to actually save some lives. They had to discover the origin of the plague soon. Silently making this resolution to himself, Shen QingQiu turned to go, only to come face to face with a person walking towards them. They held a walking stick, their figure hunched over, their hand holding a bowl shaking so much that it was about to slip. They seemed to be an old lady. Shen QingQiu moved to get out of the way, but the old lady must have been weak due to age or fatigue from hunger. She tripped and crashed into Shen QingQiu. As Shen QingQiu helped her up, the old lady mumbled, "Oh, apologies, apologies, I'm old and confused." She quickly walked past him and away, probably afraid people would take all the soup. Shen QingQiu walked another 2 steps and then balked. Something was off. That old lady looked like the faintest breeze would knock her over. But when her body crashed into him, hadn't it seemed heavier than that of an adult man? He whipped his head back around. In the crowd of people clamoring for bowls of hot soup, the old lady he had just seen was nowhere to be found. There was an opening into an alley to the left. Shen QingQiu dashed into it in pursuit. He'd managed to catch a glimpse of the hunchback silhouette flashing down the end of the alley. Well, fuck me, with this speed, they wouldn't lose to a runner doing 100-meter hurdles. Old lady, yeah, right, I must be blind. Shen QingQiu broke into a run and gave chase. Though this old lady was indeed suspicious, could he be blamed for not realizing something was strange right away? Right now, everyone in Jinlan City cut the same suspicious figure, with all that walking around, hunched over and dressed entirely in black. Mid-chase, he suddenly felt an itch on the back of his hand, and he raised it up to look. This limb really was plagued with misfortunes. It was this arm that had been poked full of holes by Elder Skyhammer Tianchui. And now it was this hand that had become infected and was breaking out in red patches. Come to think of it, it had also been this hand that had first clicked on this stupid novel, Proud Immortal Demon Way. If only he could chop it off! Ah! With this brief distraction, Shen QingQiu slowed a step. Then he sensed someone charging over, sword glare at the ready. With a flick of his fan, he prepared to return fire with a blade of wind and yelled, "Who goes there?" The person sprang from a nearby roof to the ground, and the two looked at each other, and Shen QingQiu blurted out, "Oh, Gong Yizhao!" The youth immediately lowered his sword and responded in more shock than joy, "Senior Shen! It's me! Why are you here too?" Then Shen QingQiu remembered that Yang Yizhan had said more of Huanhua Palace's people had entered the city through the underground river. That must have been the party with which Gong Yizhao arrived. "So Huanhua Palace sent you to lead a scouting party to the city?" he asked. Gong Yizhao replied, "Indeed. This junior was ordered to investigate the city, but the leader is somewhere else. And the leader is someone else." Shen QingQiu thought this curious. Gong Yizhao was the favorite disciple of Huanhua Palace's old palace master. Before Luo Binghe appeared, everyone had tacitly agreed that Gong Yizhao would be the next leader. And even the old palace master's beloved only daughter adored him. Whenever the disciples' generation did anything, Gong Yizhao was always in charge. Other than Luo Binghe, who could stomp all over this young man with his protagonist halo, who else could steal such a position? But at this moment, there was no time to mull it over. "Well, let's chase them together," Shen QingQiu said. Gong Yizhao gave a resounding agreement, and the two leapt forward side by side. The hunchbacked figure flashed into a 3-story building. Even from outside, a haze of fragrant powder assailed the nose, and as the structure was covered in beautiful decorations, it had to be some sort of brothel. But now there were no joyful voices or laughing conversations, no signs or sounds of prosperity, only a gate left wide open, the main hall dreary and oppressive. Holding their breaths and on full alert, the pair stepped over the threshold. The chairs and tables in the main hall were overturned, leaving everything a scattered mess. Shen QingQiu gave Gong Yizhao a look. "Let's split up and search. You check the private rooms on the left, and I'll take the right." He used his fan to push open the nearest door. He could make out the indistinct form of a person lying on the bed and initially raised his guard, but he lowered it soon after. It was only a skeleton wearing a colorfully adorned jacket, its head covered in pearls and jade, lying in a serene position. This was likely one of the women of the establishment who, knowing her time had come, had dressed and groomed herself, donned her best clothes, and gone to meet her death in sleep. Perhaps it was the nature of women to insist on bringing their most beautiful selves even to the end. Shen QingQiu sighed in sorrow, backed out of the room, and shut the door. Many rooms in a row each contained the corpses of women in formal dress. It seemed this brothel had been practically wiped out. As Shen QingQiu was about to push open the sixth door, he heard the sound of movement and human voices from the second floor. As he flew up the stairs with Gong Yizhao, Shen QingQiu stole to the front, but unexpectedly, before his feet had left the staircase, he heard a gentle voice of a youth. "It's no trouble." Though it was only 3 words, as soon as Shen QingQiu heard this voice, it was as if he had been struck by a bolt of lightning. The fan in his hand cracked under the force of his grip. For an instant, it was like even his breath had ceased. He was paralyzed on the steps, but he could already see into the private room at the end of the long second-floor corridor. A group of disciples dressed in Huanhua Palace's colors had crowded around a person in the center. It was a youth wearing black, shouldering a modest, unadorned longsword, his complexion clear as jade, his eyes like 2 deep pools of cold starlight. And he was at present nonchalantly moving towards Shen QingQiu. He had grown up quite a bit, and the feel of his presence was far different from before. But even if Shen QingQiu were beaten to death, he would never mistake that face. One that could grace the cover of a romance novel no matter the angle. At the same time, a familiar voice which had long spent time gathering dust spoke in Shen QingQiu's head in a mechanical tone reminiscent of Google Translate. It began to spout off messages like a barrage of gunfire. "Hello. System activation successful. Universal activation key, Luo Binghe. Self-examination results. Central power source is operating normally and in good condition. Hibernation mode suspended. Normal operation mode activated. Download and installation of update completed." Wait a minute, what the fuck? You actually updated? Thank you for your continued use of service. Can I get a refund? So Luo's here now, and is he in charge of Huanhua Palace instead of Gong Yi? What? Chapter 33. Shen QingQiu stared at that young man, who ought to have been familiar yet seemed a stranger. His limbs went stiff and his throat dry. Wasn't Luo Binghe's grand comeback supposed to be 5 years after his fall? Wasn't he currently supposed to be inside an endless hell, carving his way through thorns, studying the blade, and farming monsters? Why had this ascension moved up 2 whole years? Why were you so impatient? If you rush your leveling, you won't have any safeguards, Binghe. Shen QingQiu had the urge to turn around and sprint down the stairs, sprint out of Jinlan City, and sprint out of this goddamn world. But right after he turned around, Gong Yizhao blocked his path, and the youth just had to ask, "Senior Shen, why are you suddenly turning back? You really can't read the room, understand timing, or catch on to faces before you speak, can you, young Master Gong Yi?" A seemingly gentle voice came from behind him. "Shizun." Neck stiff, Shen QingQiu slowly turned his head. It was only a simple movement, but right now it felt like his head weighed several thousand kilograms. At this moment, his eyes, that perfect face of Luo Binghe's, was more frightening than anything in the world. What scared him even more was that expression on his face. It was neither icy cold nor poisonous, a smile hiding daggers within, but a kind and tender look that could warm its recipient down to its very bones. Oh, fuck, don't act like that! It's terrifying! The more silky soft Luo Binghe's smile, the more thoroughly his opponent's soul and body were about to be destroyed. This statement was absolutely not a joke. Shen QingQiu's entire person was stuck at the top of the stairs, unable to ascend or descend, his hair rising all down his back. Luo Binghe strolled over and spoke softly. "It really is, Shizun." His voice was velvety and light, but every word that emerged from between his teeth and every tap of his footfalls as he took each step sent Shen QingQiu's heart through the equivalent of a high-altitude bungee jump combined with an ice bucket challenge. The guillotine blade was already over his neck, nothing left but to face it. Shen QingQiu gathered his composure and steeled himself. His right hand clutched the slats of his fan, the veins bulging faintly, while his left swept up the hem to his teal robes. With a lift of his foot and one more step, he finally made it onto the second floor. With that single step, he was already about to burst into tears. Back in the year that Luo Binghe had participated in the Immortal Alliance conference, their eyes had been level with each other's. But now, Shen QingQiu had to slightly lift his head to look Luo Binghe in the eye. He was already coming up short based on the force of presence alone. Fortunately, Shen QingQiu had been a poser for years now, so he had plenty of experience. No matter how terrified he was on the inside, no matter how turbulent his emotions, his serene, unperturbed expression was solidly baked onto his face. After a long while, he painfully squeezed out a line from within his throat. What exactly is going on here? Luo Binghe gave him a smile, but he seemed to have no intention of answering. Instead, it was the group of Huanhua disciples behind him who crowded forward, clothes rustling. Only now did Shen QingQiu realize that these disciples' attitudes were completely off. In his early years, Shen QingQiu had been known in the way of great and revered scholar, and his name had swept all throughout the land. Even when he met with others of the same generation, it was rare for them not to consciously welcome him with respect, to say nothing of a junior from another sect. Yet these Huanhua Palace disciples seemed to be full of hostility towards him. Their gazes brimmed with displeasure, and some were already flashing their weapons. Given how Luo Binghe was standing there perfectly unflappable, this group of perfectly fine youths from a famous righteous sect looked more like a gang of henchmen ready to rush forward and stake their lives for their boss. Or like demonic lackeys poised to kill and burn. Don't you have it wrong, young people. Don't be in such a hurry to be someone's bodyguard, okay? And if the person behind you needs your protection, as if the person behind you needs your protection. It's already pretty good that he's not harming anyone, but the person who really needs protection is me! Me! Realizing the atmosphere was off, Gong Yi Zhao inserted himself between the disciples and Shen QingQiu. Put your swords away, he reprimanded them quietly. What sort of manners are these? They relented and showed some restraint. The ones who'd drawn their swords grudgingly sheathed them, but their hostility towards Shen QingQiu didn't decrease. No wonder. Of course Gong Yi Zhao wasn't the one leading the party this time. A while back, if the most highly regarded disciple had spoken, none of his fellow disciples would have dared show displeasure. But now Luo Binghe was here, and his post-darkening brainwashing skills were first-rate. So everything inevitably revolved around him. Even after 10,000 years, no one else could ever again become the default leader. But even though Shen QingQiu felt like he was about to suffer a concussion from pure shock, he still couldn't figure this out. When exactly had Luo Binghe infiltrated Huanhua Palace? In the original works progression, that didn't happen until at least 2 years in the future. Both sides stood stiffly for a while, until a graceful young lady dressed in a light yellow outer robe abruptly emerged from the sidelines. You still have the time for this? She said while shedding tears. Luo Zhizhong, that scoundrel harmed Luo Zhizhong. Can't you focus on finding a way to help him first? Only now did Shen QingQiu notice a humanoid figure collapsed in the far corner. It was that fake old lady. He looked at Luo Binghe again and saw that a portion of his sleeve seemed to have been shaved away by a sword glare, exposing a small section of his wrist. Luo Binghe's skin was very fair, so the couple of red spots on his wrist were especially stark. Shen QingQiu instinctively let slip. You were infected? Luo Binghe gave him a glance and then shook his head. It's but a minor wound. All that matters is that everyone is safe. With that considerate display of selflessness, for a moment Shen QingQiu could almost believe that the individual before his eyes was still that bleating, grass-loving little lamb who had huddled behind his knees. However, the Huanhua Palace disciples really were good at raining on his parade. Well, isn't this just perfect, one remarked sarcastically. I suppose Senior Shen's overjoyed that Luo Zhizhong was infected by the plague, right? Shen QingQiu was seriously starting to wonder when exactly he'd offended the entirety of Huanhua Palace. Oh my god. Oh my god. There's so much to talk about. Gong Yizhao took in Shen QingQiu's expression and felt incredibly embarrassed. He turned back to his fellows and scolded them in low tones. Be quiet, all of you. As a senior who'd made his name years ago, Shen QingQiu could never sink so low as to squabble with insignificant youths who'd been brainwashed by the male lead. Expression indifferent, Shen QingQiu dropped his arms so the sleeve naturally covered the back of his hand that had broken out in red spots after he'd first bumped into the fake old lady. So they don't know, so Luo doesn't know that he's been affected too. Pockmarks covered half the face of the disciple who'd spoken. Once scolded, he resentfully closed his mouth, his entire expression reeking dissatisfaction. Then, Chen QingQiu spoke. It's her, yeah. It's all our fault. Luo Zhizhong, if you hadn't protected us, you wouldn't have. Shen QingQiu had already roughly surmised the truth of what was spreading throughout the city. He could guarantee it on all the youth and frustrations he'd wasted following his 20 million word plus serialization for years. First, to a mixed lineage heavenly demon like Luo Binghe, this thing was the approximate equivalent of a saline water or glucose, entirely harmless. It might even have health benefits for him. Second, if Luo Binghe had let others drag him down or been injured for their sake, that definitely was a plan of his own design. No need to ponder. Don't you know that's the fastest way to farm righteous reputation and favor points? Shen QingQiu couldn't stand to keep watching the air of heartbroken grief hanging over Huanhua Palace's party. Of course, what he couldn't stand even more was having this silent stare down with Luo Binghe. It was as if both of them were waiting for the other to speak first. Instead, Shen QingQiu steeled himself and prepared to do a bit of proper business. Without another sideways glance, he walked towards the fake old lady's corpse and drew Zhu Ya. With a few slashes, he shredded the black cloth to pieces, revealing the body inside, as expected. At a glance, this person's appearance was ordinary, and it was impossible to tell if they were male or female, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was this, and it was dreadful. The body's skin was completely scarlet, like the entire thing had been thrown into boiling water and cooked through. Yet rather than having been reduced to a mush, the carcass was whole. A sower, said Shen QingQiu. Sower was a type of profession among demons. To put it mundanely, as Shen QingQiu understood it, they were demon realm's equivalent of farmers, farm owners, or wholesale food distributors. Due to a variety of reasons, including local geography and race, many of the demon realm's creatures had a rather peculiar biological need. This included a portion of demons who tended towards hardcore tastes. To put it concretely, they liked to eat rotted things. The more rancid and putrid, the better. Anything crawling with maggots was considered both exceptionally exquisite delicacies and abundantly nutritious. But where could one acquire such a quantity of rotten things? This was the purpose of the sowers. The flesh of every non-demonic organism a sower touched and purposefully seeded would, after a short period of time, begin to fester. In days past, this practice had enabled a type of massive communal meal that had been popular on the noble estates in the demon realm. The estate lord would capture some 100 living people, corral them in a structure like cattle, send sowers into their midst, and within 7 days, once the victims had sufficiently rotted, the doors could be opened. You could either let the people stumble out and eat them where they fell, or walk inside yourself and devour them on the spot. This manner of unique dining was custom and disgusting in the extreme. Of course, the ancient heavenly demons from whose lineage Luo Binghe hailed were the most elegant and traditional of the demonic bloodlines, equivalent to the demon realm's blue blood nobility. The average demon commoner's B-point scores couldn't even begin to compare to a heavenly demon's. Needless to say, the heavenly demons had not partaken in these faddish tastes. If not for that, Luo Binghe could be as handsome and rule-breakingly OP as he wanted, but girls would be unable to overcome the physiologically and psychologically taxing challenge this bizarre world-building detail would present to their worldviews. So Shen QingQiu suspected. Think about it. How suffocating would it be to feel to kiss him if it were true? Why are you thinking of kissing him right now? You're thinking of kissing him right now. It's a good thing he's not eating other corpses, because how could I kiss him then? Shen QingQiu, oh, the tension is ripe, y'all. I can't even begin. Since sower as a profession was grossly anti-human, it had incited the uncompromising ear or ire of many human realm cultivators at the time. Consequently, they had launched a campaign to eradicate all sowers. Quite a few nameless heroes had even risked infection and ended up perishing together with the sowers. Within 10 years, sowers had gone almost entirely extinct, becoming rare even within the demon realm. It was entirely normal for young disciples and ordinary cultivators to have never heard of them. But whenever he was at his leisure, Shen QingQiu was in the habit of taking an aged text from Xi Jinping's eclectic collection and reading it as a speculative fiction novel. So he understood the situation well. Unfortunately, this conclusion that he'd come to all by himself, which should have been a helpful contribution, went underappreciated. So, Senior also knew about the demonic abominations that are sowers, Chen QingQiu said politely. Luo Shizhong guessed the identity of the culprit a while back. Just now he explained the relevant information to us in detail. When she finished, she and all the other Huanhua disciples directed an adoring, longing gaze towards Luo Binghe, as if his face were emitting thousands of rays of golden light. It's here. Could this be the legendary, regardless of what the male lead says, everyone else will feel their own IQ and knowledge get absolutely crushed by his words, protagonist halo of wisdom? Luo Binghe looked towards Shen QingQiu and smiled. Everything I know was taught to me by Shizun. The most terrifying thing was that Shen QingQiu got the feeling that Luo Binghe's face really was emitting a faint glow. Shen QingQiu very much didn't want to waste any more time in this kind of eerie atmosphere. However, since Huanhua Palace had killed the sower, naturally, the right to handle the corpse was also theirs. If that's the case, may we borrow this corpse for study? Shen QingQiu asked. It's possible Mushidi may discover something and may assist us in developing a medicine that will curb the epidemic as early as possible. Luo Binghe nodded. Everything will be as Shizun says. This disciple will deliver the corpse promptly. This is eerie. This is weird and eerie. The way that Shizun left his mouth every time he said it made all of Shen QingQiu's hairs stand on end. At last, he acutely understood how characters in the original work felt when facing that dagger-concealing smile of Luo Binghe's. But I can't decide, is Luo Binghe pissed at him, or is he obsessed with him and totally forgiving? I'm as confused as Shen QingQiu about it. Shen QingQiu pulled himself away and flicked aside his sleeves, and then left without a second word. After exiting that abandoned building, Shen QingQiu fell into a state of devastated psychological shock. His head swam as he walked, his steps unsteady. Gong Yizhao chased after him. When he saw that Shen QingQiu's face was pale, his expression distracted, he nervously said, Oh, Senior Shen, I must apologize. In truth, I knew that Luo Shizhong was with Huanhua Palace, but our master ordered us to keep it a strict secret and not let outsiders know. Violators would be expelled from the sect. I couldn't inform you of the situation. Shen QingQiu grabbed him. I have only one question for you. When and how did Luo Binghe end up in your Huanhua Palace? It was Qin Shimei. Last year, she rescued a grievously injured and unconscious Luo Shizhong on the banks of the Luo River. Last year. In only one short year, Luo Binghe had kicked Gong Yizhao off of his pedestal as the most trusted disciple. It seemed that not only had Luo Binghe's annexation of Huanhua Palace occurred earlier, but his efficiency had improved. Also, Gong Yizhao really was doomed to be cannon fodder, fated only to be kicked off of various #1 pedestals by the male lead. After you rescued him, why didn't he return to Sangzhong Mountain Sect? Shen QingQiu asked. Gong Yizhao took careful stock of Shen QingQiu's expression, and he spoke cautiously. Once Luo Zhizhong was rescued and woke up, he seemed to be unwilling to bring up the past. When he was delivering his farewells, he disclosed that he wouldn't return to Sangzhong Mountain Sect, and that he hoped Huanhua Palace would keep his whereabouts a secret. It seemed he intended to wander the world, but our master thinks very highly of Luo Zhizhong, so he vigorously urged him to stay. They don't call each other master and disciple, but with the way our master treats him, he's already no different from a succeeding heir. So that's how it was. No wonder Huanhua Palace disciples had shown such hostile attitude towards Shen QingQiu just a moment ago. This act of Luo Binghe's was his standard trampled white lotus who silently endures. People had no doubt begun to think, if everything is fine, why would Luo Binghe be unwilling to return? Maybe it's because Sangzhong Mountain Sect and Shen QingQiu in particular have wronged him. That false news of his death at the Immortal Alliance conference must be covering up some terrible secrets. Luo Binghe's brainwashing skills weren't just talk. Having seen how these disciples blindly and fastidiously followed him, Shen QingQiu knew exactly where Luo Binghe stood with the Huanhua Palace. A disciple from Sect A took a trip to Sect B. Subsequently, the entire hierarchy of Sect B from top to bottom cried and begged for him to stay, and even hid and concealed him so that other sects wouldn't find out. How unscientific and unreasonable. But with the male lead's halo shining upon the situation, it was absolutely logical. Shen QingQiu was silent. Gong Yizhao thought him sad and disappointed. His beloved disciple hadn't died, but instead preferred to roam around the world instead of returning to see him. Of course, this was a painful tragedy. So Gong Yizhao offered consolation. Senior Shen shouldn't pay it any mind. Perhaps Luo Zhizhong is struggling with a temporal internal conflict that he's yet to resolve. Before now, he never left Huanhua Palace's sphere of influence. Yet when he heard that Sangzhong Mountain's Senior Shen was participating in the rescue efforts here, he took the initiative and asked to come. Perhaps there's been some turn for the better, although my Shidi and Shimei, on this matter, I believe they've misunderstood, Senior. I hope you won't hold it against them. Shen QingQiu's heart was as choked as a dammed up river. Sure enough, the positive reputation he'd painstakingly farmed over many years was nothing in the face of Luo Binghe's ability to smear him without second thought. And what a thorough smearing. But on second thought, this couldn't actually be considered smearing. After all, Shen QingQiu hadn't been wrongly accused in this case. He had indeed kicked Luo Binghe down into the endless abyss. In the end, he couldn't find any reason to justify or exonerate himself. And you? Shen QingQiu asked. Why don't you misunderstand? Gong Yizhao was stunned for a short while, and then he said, though I don't know exactly what happened in Judy Gorge, I wholeheartedly believe that Senior isn't that sort of person who would harm his own disciple. As he said this, Gong Yizhao was thinking back on their meeting in Bailu Forest. Specifically, he was remembering the things that Shen QingQiu had accidentally let slip, and the way he'd affectionately gazed upon that monster. That's why he doesn't believe him. Oh my God. Meanwhile, Shen QingQiu was thinking, well, it makes sense since we're both cannon fodder fated to fall to the male lead's indestructible body. Oh my God! We're able to understand and sympathize with each other's situations more than anyone else. Therefore, both parties were moved. While they were being busy pleased within their own minds, the group from Huanhua Palace had caught up with them. Shen QingQiu accidentally glanced back and saw that Luo Binghe was looking over in his direction. In the brief instant's time since his reunion with Luo Binghe, it seemed that Shen QingQiu's heart had become quite a bit more delicate. It often felt like a small boat caught in a raging sea amidst a storm. Oh, just talk to him! Apologize! Say something! For example, at present, though Luo Binghe wasn't standing anywhere close to him and had maintained an appropriate smile, that pair of cold, pitch-black eyes pierced him with incredible force, making Shen QingQiu's heart tremble in fright. Binghe, what's wrong now? Even the sight of cannon fodder talking and huddling together for warmth offends you. Oh my God, no! He's jealous of Gongi! Oh my God! No! He doesn't realize it! No! Upon arriving at the entrance of Jinzi Weapons Shop, Shen QingQiu heard someone inside who was arguing loud enough to shake the roof. This was all thanks to Liu Qingge. Liu Qingge was responsible for the hard labor, and after they'd separated, he'd gone to capture experimental subjects for Mu Qingfang. With the people in the city so on edge, no one was willing to cooperate. However, at this point, they didn't have the luxury to be concerned with consent, so they'd resorted to martial power to solve the problem. On top of that, Liu Qingge had never been the sort of patient person who preferred reason over force. His approach was highly consistent with Bison Peak's customs. He simply went out and grabbed whoever he saw. In one pass, he had collected more than 10 burly macho men and tied them up by the forge, which had now become Mu Qingfeng's research lab and experimental station. All this happened in this short time. This big group of big, strong men were shouting, cursing, crying, and wailing so terribly no women could have overcome their performance. Once Shen QingQiu arrived in the cellar, he explained the unexpected events that had just experienced to his companions. However, for the time being, he didn't bring up that he himself had been infected. Master Wu Chen once again chanted Amitabha. Thanks to our fellow cultivators from the Sangzhong Mountain, we finally made progress on this matter. I'm afraid it's not that straightforward, said Shen QingQiu. The infected cannot infect each other, and according to Xingjing Peak's ancient texts, the largest recorded number of people a single sower has infected in one go is only about 300. If a population as large as an entire city has been infected, there absolutely has to be more than one culprit. Liu Qingge placed his hands on the sword's hilt and stood. Shen QingQiu knew he was the type to act first and think later, to up and leave without another word. He indubitably wanted to set out and find the other sowers in the instant. Now slow down, Shen QingQiu said hurriedly. I still have something else to say. Go ahead, Shizun, said Mu Qingfeng. Shen QingQiu didn't know how to start, and he hesitated a moment before he sang, Luo Binghe is back. There was little reaction. In the first place, of the three, Master Wu Chen was from Zhaohua Monastery and didn't know this Luo Binghe. Meanwhile, Mu Qingfeng rarely cared about things other than medicine. Thus, it was only Liu Qingge who frowned. That disciple of yours? He asked, stunned. Didn't he die at the hands of the demons during the Immortal Alliance conference? Shen QingQiu found it was getting harder to explain. He didn't die. He came back alive. It's a long story. He stepped forward. Let's patrol the city first, and I'll explain this in detail when we get back. All right, said Mu Qingfeng. The earlier we take care of the remaining sowers, the fewer horrors the people will suffer. I should also go check on these patients. As soon as he spoke, Shen QingQiu thought of that brightly shining set of silver surgical tools that Mu Qingfeng had always carried with him, which included all kinds of knives and needles. When spread out, they seemed to belong to the scene of a forensic autopsy. There were also hundreds upon thousands of bottles and jars in his infinite storage, all with all sorts of labels. The words and descriptions on those labels were just like the flavor and effects of the contents within. Stuff that made people go green upon hearing, let alone smelling, that made their courage flee with a glance. In a moment, that group of macho men by the forging station upstairs likely really would blow their lids, and the roof with it. Shen QingQiu let out a dry laugh. He was about to follow Liu Qingge out of the cellar when from out of nowhere, his heartbeat suddenly seemed 100 times louder. His movements also slowed and he became sluggish. Liu Qingge sensed that something was off and he immediately asked, What's wrong? Shen QingQiu didn't answer and only tried to summon a spiritual blast with his right hand. A feeble spiritual flow sputtered through it, forming not a single spark. Oh, fuck me. Of course I have a flare-up at such an important time. Are you kidding me? Without a cure, Mu Qingfeng said quietly. Liu Qingge pressed his fingers to Shen QingQiu's pulse, waiting there for a moment before resolutely pushing him back down into a chair. We'll sit here and wait. Wait for what? For Luo Binghe to show up at the door? Shen QingQiu shot to his feet. I'm going with you. Liu Qingge never gave others face when speaking. Don't be a hindrance. Master, you're the Bison Peak Lord capable of single-handedly holding off thousands of enemies. How would letting me fly with you be a hindrance? Shen Shizong, have you taken your medication today? Was it on time? Mu Qingfeng asked. Shen QingQiu truly wanted to scream at the heavens. I haven't given up on therapy! I clearly took my medicine on time this month, and I had Great Master Liu help circulate my meridians on time too. Exactly why would it be randomly flaring up? It's basically lightning on a clear day. I'm utterly baffled. At this moment, the system just had to, of all things, send a sudden notification. Protagonist satisfaction points plus 100. Get lost! Why are you saying this? What are you saying with this? Whenever Shen QingQiu meets misfortune, the male lead is extra satisfied? Shen Qingshang, you must not force yourself, Mu Qingfeng added. Liu Shizong is also doing this for your own good. Exerting yourself and rushing around during a flare-up is enormously dangerous. You stay here and rest. I'll go prepare medicine. Wait for Liu Shizhong to return, and then I'll help clear your meridians. Shen QingQiu stood 3 times. But Liu Qingge pushed him back down every single one, and Mu Qingfang's tone was that of a man lecturing an unruly child. In the end, Shen QingQiu could only helplessly say, well, very well. Liu Shidi, listen to me. A sower's entire body is covered with scarlet skin, and they are highly infectious. If you meet something suspicious that looks similar, don't be rash and get close. Attack from afar. Once you return, you must come to my room without delay. I have something very important to discuss with you. The last sentence was the most crucial. Shen QingQiu deliberately enunciated the words with added emphasis. Comradeship is priceless and fraternal love supreme. 1,000 days are spent training troops for the sake of one moment. Master Liu, you absolutely must shield me. After the Liu Mu pair left the cellar, Wu Qin descended into intense thought. But mortal Master Shen, don't you think it's strange? He asked. The demon realm was quiet for so long, yet in recent years, there seems to be signs of a resurgence. At the last Immortal Alliance conference, numerous rare demonic creatures reappeared in the human realm, and this incident in Jinlan City is even more troubling. Sowers appearing now, after they were eradicated 100 years ago? This one worries that this most likely isn't a good omen. Shen QingQiu profoundly agreed. Master, your apprehensions are exactly why I can't be at ease. And this iteration of sowers are markedly stronger than their predecessors. None of the sowers I read about from 100 years back were able to prevent the infected from traveling to a certain distance from them, lest they undergo accelerated decay. Moreover, Luo Binghe should have remained in the endless abyss for 2 more years. He's broken out early. How could this be a fucking good omen? After being infected, Master Wu Qin's martial aspect had been heavily damaged, and the drain on his energy was enormous. Not long into their discussion, he became tired. Shen QingQiu helped him lie down and did his best to quietly leave the cellar. They had hidden Wu Qin within the cellar so he wouldn't be exposed to light or the elements. Shen QingQiu's actual room was on the 2nd floor of the weapons shop's inner courtyard. Liu Qingge had yet to return, and at this time, it would have been impossible for Shen QingQiu to sleep, even if he wanted to. He sat at a table and lost himself in his thoughts. One moment, he'd think of the little lamb, Luo Binghe, who'd always followed him around while calling Shizun. In the next, he'd think of that black lotus, Luo Binghe, who he'd only just met, who had left him so thoroughly drenched in unease that he wanted to rip out all of his hair. After an unknown length of time, someone knocked on the door twice, neither light nor heavy. Shen QingQiu hastily stood from the table. Liu Shidi, I've been waiting for you all night. Come in quickly. The room's set of double doors flew open. Luo Binghe stood in the entrance. Behind him was unbounded darkness. His hands were tucked behind his back. His lips curved slightly upward, but his eyes seemed like icy pools 1,000 meters deep. Yet those eyes smiled as he said, Shizun, hello. This is like a horror movie. Maybe this is all just a misunderstanding. I don't even know where to start. I don't know. Oh, MXTX. Oh, MXTX. I feel like that meme from The Good Place where it's the one guy up against the poster. He's like, oh, Shen QingQiu, we're in it now. Oh, MXTX, y'all didn't warn me that this was gonna be a story about angst. No! Okay, I'm gonna have to Romania's gonna have to adjust her goggles because this is gonna be an angst city story, is it not? We're only on volume 2 and he's already back. Within the first chapter, he's back. Okay. And his attitude is nothing like I anticipated. It just happens. He's just there. They just look at each other and they're like, oh, hey, been 3 years. Remember what happened up at that mountain over the abyss? we're just gonna awkwardly ignore the problem right in front of us because Shen QingQiu doesn't know what to do because Shen QingQiu thinks he's gonna kill him, and we're gonna talk about this, but this fog of misunderstanding, this massive fog of misunderstanding, is going to make me crazy. I'm just like, oh my god, okay. So let's compare, as we go through this, let's compare as my dog was like, I was patient with you while you silently and quietly read this and freaked out, and now you have to throw my toy. So I'm like, okay. So let's go through this. There are two pictures. We will discuss them as we get to them. But so the OG version, as far as I know with the OG version, I'm going to be theorizing a lot, by the way. I'm going to be 90% wrong, by the way, because I'm already wrong with what I thought was going to be. My body is not ready for the tension. It is not ready for the angst. It is not ready for all that is coming down the pipeline. Oh my God. I have a feeling, here's my thing, MXTX, some authors and some series that I'm reading, I feel a little bit hesitant to know if it's going to pay off in a way that I'm going to appreciate. I know MXTX, right? I know from reading Heaven Official's Blessing and Modao Zushi that it is going to pay off. It is going to be worth it. But damn, the angst that's being set up in these chapters, I was like, MXTX, you are going to crush us to pieces, aren't you? You are going to grind us into stone before building us back up, aren't you? And I'm going to wait till the comments for this coming week, but then I'm gone. I'm like, I already want to read ahead. I already want to read ahead to the next section. I was like, I got to read ahead, but I got to wait. I'm going to pace myself so I don't rush through it. And that's where we're going to be. But I can tell already that y'all may have to deal with me reading a little bit ahead because I can't stop. I reading this, I kept expecting chapter 33 was a long ass chapter, right? Chapter 33 was a long chapter. I kept waiting for it to end. I was like, when's the cliffhanger going to be? When's it going to be the cliffhanger? And then they leave you on the cliffhanger and you're like, oh my God. So yeah. Whoa. Okay. So in the OG version, to my knowledge, from what we know now, and as we find out as we go, now keep in mind, as of the beginning of the story, there's a lot of generalization. The Donghua in the novel, they kind of streamlined some things for us, but we're going to get it, basically, this is an abridged version, but it's going to relate to the new version over here. So in the OG version, Shen QingQiu just kicked Luo Binghe off into the abyss. And by that point, the OG Shen QingQiu was not a nice person. He'd been terrible to Luo Binghe. They hated each other. And it was like the straw that broke the camel's back was him kicking him to the abyss. And then from there, Luo Binghe trained with Meng Mo. By the way, we're going to talk about this. With Meng Mo for 5 years while amassing this demon army to rise to the surface and start invading everywhere. And if I remember correctly from the Donghua, I believe that the Huanhua Palace was like the first place he went to. I think that was like this. And what he ended up doing was he killed the master of Huanhua Palace, and the daughter, along with Wan Yu and Wan Rong, they all joined him in his harem, and it started from there. And then he went on this world tour of just dismantling all of the sects. He got Ning Yingying, who'd been grieving for him for years, to join him, killed Ming Fan, and then eventually got to Shen QingQiu, who was dismembered by him and tortured by him. And meanwhile, Mo Beijun was following him, and Shang Qinghua, who is not present for any of these chapters. I'm like, when Shen QingQiu catches back up with him, there's going to be a lot they are going to have to talk about. But that is neither here nor there. So, but yeah, he dismembered and tortured him, and that's what we know from the story. And then he goes on, has sex with hundreds of women, and that's where we're at, right? That's literally where the story goes to. We are not doing that in this version. And so it's very weird. But in this original version, Luo Binghe, like Shen QingQiu, had been awful to him. So Luo Binghe is just full of hatred, right? He's full of hatred, right? Here, it's a little more complicated. It's a little more different. We're definitely, one thing that I like is that one of Shen QingQiu's goals in the story is to make the side characters more intelligent and more up to speed. And so I like the fact that Ning Ying and Ming Fan have kind of become better characters. They've become nicer and more like complete, well-rounded characters. And they're not just, just this flat character. Here's the thing. Shen QingQiu, through his love of Luo Binghe, is convincing the other characters that Shen QingQiu is in love with Luo Binghe. And thus, it almost breaks that illusion of the protagonist's spell. So like Ning Ying, she knows, I think, that Shen QingQiu liked Luo Binghe, and so she's like not disillusioned anymore. Ming Fan, he knows. And then now we have confirmation that Gong Yi, we'll talk about him in a second, he's not, influenced by Luo Binghe because he knows that Shen QingQiu loves him. And it's like, oh! And then Liu Qingge, he's kind of an anomaly. He's not even supposed to be here. He's there when he should have been dead. Same with Yu Qingyang. Both of those characters should be dead, so they're there, changing the story up. But the difference is that Luo Binghe is poisoned now, whereas he wasn't in the original. He's also been infected by this sower, so that's going to be a thing, and nobody knows that he's been infected yet, so that's going to be a thing. We're going to talk about it here in a little bit. And Liu Qingge is needed to keep him alive, to keep his meridians, his center cleared, right? So Shen QingQiu, he's kind of like, oh, I'm screwed, because not only did I kick Luo Binghe into the abyss, I stabbed him and then kicked him. So I've just made things worse for me. So I don't blame Shen QingQiu. Shen QingQiu has no idea that Luo Binghe loves him. Has no idea. No earthly idea. So I don't blame Shen QingQiu for being freaked out this entire time, because the last thing you want to do is meet up with this guy 2 years in advance and be like, why are you here? Why is this happening? What's going on? Why is this system rebooting? That system rebooting was like, it was like a Windows update and everything was suddenly like popping up on screen. And he's like, oh God, I wasn't ready for the update. But the thing that is so insane about all of this is that if we go from Shen QingQiu's perspective, we're going to put him over here. We're going to put Luo Binghe over here. Okay. Shen QingQiu is very rightfully so terrified of Luo Binghe because he does not know. He's like, he doesn't know that he loves him. So he thinks that when he comes out of this, he's going to be pissed. And he's like, he's going to be mad at me. He's going to be mad that I sent him to the abyss. Right? That I tried to kill him. And he has these like sun, moon, dew mushrooms. We don't know what their purpose is. We have Sang Qinghua, which conveniently is not present in these chapters. So what's he doing right now? How is he going to respond to all of this? We don't know. He seems to think that Shen QingQiu likes Luo Binghe, and Shen QingQiu's like, I don't know what you're talking about, when it's like the writing is on the wall, right? So, but his whole thing is that he does not believe that Luo Binghe likes him. So he thinks he's just pissed at him, right? We'll talk about Luo Binghe here in just a second. But anyway, so we find out that 3 years have passed, and he's been getting Liu Qingge to give him assistance clearing his meridians to treat his poison. He's gotten prescriptions from Qingfang. He's been taking some medicine. Again, these are all things Luo Binghe does not know about. So Luo Binghe does not fully know the state of the poison. He knows about it, right? He knows about it because they were going to go look for the flower. He knows of it, but I don't think he knows like all the procedures that Shen QingQiu is doing to keep it sustained, right? And then he briefly visits the peak to do leveling missions for his disciples, and he wanders about the outside world. What's interesting is both of them have been wandering around. Both of them have been wandering around, but not seeing each other. Now, to an onlooker from the outside, that would seem like they broke up. It would appear like they broke up, and they're just wistfully wandering out being like, oh, I'm sad I'm not with him anymore. He's not here anymore, but what can we do? We just don't see eye to eye anymore, is what it feels like. I'm sure that's what Luo Binghe thinks it is. Shen QingQiu just thinks that he's just biding his time until until Luo Binghe returns. He's like, well, I'm just biding my time, getting stuff ready. He's like, and then we find out about Ming Fan. And Ming Fan's grown up a little bit. I'm hoping we see a picture of him in the story eventually, because I would really like to see it. But he's not, I like how Shen QingQiu's like, well, he's not hot, but he's neat. He's neat. He's okay. I'm not attracted to him, but he's okay. And then he's talking about Ning Ying, who's this beautiful lady, and rather than being this emaciated, grieving widower, she's like become this young, like healthy girl. And Shen QingQiu, he doesn't want to give off the wrong idea around her. So he's like, shouldn't the one you miss be Luo Binghe? Why are you thinking about a scum villain? As one of his wives, weren't you supposed to suffer these years of sleepless nights and lack of appetite? So again, Shen QingQiu does not think very much of himself, right? He doesn't think very highly of himself. He's trying to keep his fate from happening, but he doesn't really think it's going to be. I feel like Shen QingQiu does not think he's going to be successful at keeping that fate from happening. Although him and Shang Qinghua are trying their hardest to do something. So they talk about the style of education just basically being you have a herd of disciples and you just kind of teach them things, and then whoever picks up and learns the most ends up taking over. And that's how it goes. But I think it's amazing because we find out that Liu Qingge does not work well with others. He doesn't want to have a disciple. That makes a lot of sense because not only with his character, but the fact that he's not supposed to be alive. So he's not supposed to have any disciples anyway. So him getting a disciple, like if he takes on Yang Yizhan, if he takes him on, that's going to be completely against the story. So it's going to be changing up the story even more. So I'm like, Shen QingQiu, you are stirring the pot, sir, and you don't even realize it. Or maybe he does. So they call this meeting of the Peak Lords, and basically what they've been doing. Does he mention what they've been doing otherwise? Like basically, do they mention what he's been doing before that? Not really. He's going to talk about Shang Cho here in a minute. So they gather all of them together, and they start the meeting, and then Shang Qinghua, they talk about Jinlan City, and so they talk about the Zhaohua Monastery being next to it, and how this whole plague has been going on. I'm surprised starting this new volume that we don't talk more about Shen QingQiu and Shang Qinghua. I'm surprised we don't talk more about them and what they've been up to. Like, what has Shang Qinghua been up to this whole time for the last 3 years? What's he been doing? Has he been just chilling out eating sunflower seeds and having a fun time? Like, they don't get into that. And MXTX is really good about diverting your attention. MXTX is great with this. She will divert your attention away from things you should be thinking about, and then 20 chapters later, she'll be like, oh yeah, that thing you were wondering about back then that I should have told you that I've waited until now, here's the bomb, and you're like, what? So I'm fully prepared that we're going to go back and find out more about it, but not right now, because MXTX is trying to throw you off and make you forget about these things. She's really good at it too, which is crazy. So they talk about the merchant, everything being swaddled from head to foot, head to toe, which I'm glad we finally get the reasoning behind. I'm glad we do that. But they're like, we need to go solve this problem. And so since there was a plague, they're like, we're the last sect that hasn't gone and investigated. We definitely need to do so. So Shen QingQiu, I like that the story has made it to where Shen QingQiu has to go. He has to go. Because I don't think Shen QingQiu wanted to go. I think he was like, no, that seems like a dangerous mission, and I already know I'm getting dangerous missions later on, so I'd be fine just staying here and cultivating my stuff some more. That'd be fine. But the story, it's like the story is not going to let you go through that. The story is going to make you and Luo Binghe meet each other. Because Luo Binghe, it's like these two were on different islands and they're like, we don't want to talk to anybody else. We don't want to talk to anybody else. We're just going to stay here. It's fine. We don't want to see each other because it's awkward. We had a bad fight. We had a breakup. We don't want to talk to each other. We're just going to stay in our own little towns and never speak to each other again. And then this whole thing happens, which here's the weird thing with the plague. I mean, of course, Luo Binghe knows what it's about, but the plague is caused by a sower that is from the demon realm. Now, Luo Binghe seems to have nothing to do with this sower, and in fact killed the sower and doesn't want anything to do with it. So if Luo Binghe, we find out that he left, we don't know, he left or wound up at the Huanhua Palace 2 years after the Abyss. What he was doing those 2 years, we don't know. Was he with Meng Mo? Was he training with the demons? Why did he wash up on the shores of Huanhua Palace 2 years, 3 years earlier than he should have? We don't know. But it seems like he's not connected to this plague. So then the question is, well, who's causing the plague? My instant answer would be Xia Hualing, because she's a little shit stirrer and she likes to cause problems. So my guess would be that she's trying to get Luo Binghe's attention, and maybe he ran away from the demon realm. Who knows? Maybe he grabbed the sword and left, because he seems to have the sword with him. But maybe he grabbed the sword and left the demon realm, and Xia Hualing is trying to find him. Maybe. And so she's using this sower to lure him out of hiding. Because here's the thing. He went to the Huanhua Palace and convinced them to keep it a secret. So nobody knew about it. Nobody knew where he was for the last year. So it sounds to me like Xia Hualing or the demon realm were like, well, let's lure Luo Binghe out. What can we do? We'll set loose this plague in the city. It will get eventually all the sects to come, and then surely Luo will be part of that because he can't resist, and he'll show up and we'll, get him to come out of the woodwork and try to convince him to come back to the demon realm. Maybe. Who knows? We don't know why he left. We don't know what circumstances were happening. We just know he left, ended up at Huanhua Palace, and had been staying there until this all came up. And the only reason he left the island to go investigate was because he found out Shen was going to be there. And Luo's like, I can't let him go on his own to this place he could get infected. He could end up hurt. And everything's for Shizun. So I'm like, which we're going to talk about here. So that's why he ended up going there, right? So, but Shen QingQiu wasn't going to go. And it's like the book itself, the system itself is like, no, Shen QingQiu, if you want to save yourself, you're going to have to go to the city and meet up with him. It's going to happen. You got to rip off the Band-Aid and start owning up to what you did. You got to start owning up. And we're going to talk about it, but he's not owning up because he's a damn poser peacock. And he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't realize what Luo Binghe is thinking about him. And it's so frustrating. But he wasn't going to go. And so the system and the story made it to where the two people that he really needs to stay alive are going. So he has to go. And ironically, the irony of all ironies is that he's fine. They're fine. He's the one that gets infected. They're fine. And it's like, although I don't know, Liu Qingge is like act first, think later. So I'm a little bit worried about him getting infected, but who knows? Who knows what's going to end up happening? Anyway, so he's like, what if there's an unexpected accident? How could he not do his part to watch over them? I think at this point, what's interesting is that the story is majorly diverting. At this point, and I think even Shen QingQiu is aware that it's majorly diverting because he didn't even know about this plague. It like wasn't in the original story. He's like, I know the cause of it because I know about all the monsters, but he's like, I don't remember this happening in the book. So this wasn't part of the original storyline. Everything's messed up, right? So he decides to go with the two of them, making the Liu Shen Mu trio to go investigate. And we get our first picture. We show it on here. We get our first picture of the crew once they make it to the city. And the little boy, Yang Yizhan, is leading them around. Interestingly enough, I didn't know what Mu Qingfang would look like. He looks a lot younger than I thought than he does in the Donghua. The Donghua makes him look a lot older and plainer. He looks really pretty in this version. I really like it. I love Liu Qingge's giant bang that just hangs in front of his face like a dang stalk, like a lily stalk. And then of course Shen QingQiu has the fan, and we see the sower in the cape there, or they're all shrouded there. Anyway, that's one of the pictures. So then they're like, we have to take our leave. I like the little fact that Shen QingQiu doesn't like flying on the swords. he dislikes flying on them. And so, but it's so funny because at the beginning of the story, he was like, why aren't we flying on swords? Why are we in horse carriages? I don't like this. And now he's like, actually, I don't like flying on swords. They make me seasick. It's like, yeah. So it's kind of funny to see how he's changed. Like Shen QingQiu has changed from the beginning of the novel over the course of several years in this story to become like, he's still himself, Shen Yan, but he's also like merged into Shen QingQiu, and it's kind of crazy. So they talk about going to the winding pair of endless ribbony rivers. And one of the rivers is the one that Luo Binghe is named after. The other is Hang, which is interesting. But yeah, so there's a barrier to prevent anything with spiritual or demonic chi from passing through. So then that begs the question of, how did the plague get in if they put this barrier up? I guess because of the barrier, whoever got into the city went the same way that they did, through the river and the underground cave. I guess so, probably. So then they go into the river, into the cave entrance, and that's where they see the corpse. So again, Shen QingQiu does not talk very much about what Shi Qinghua has been doing this whole time, so we don't exactly know what's going on, but they start to see all of these skeletal corpses, and then, you know, as a poser, I like that Shen QingQiu's whole thing is that he is an expert poser, supposedly. He is an expert poser who is just saving face, supposedly, all the time. He lets it slip sometimes, as Gong Yi has noticed, but he's trying to maintain this image of himself and that everything's fine. He's literally the dog right now in the story in a burning room with the coffee cup going, this is fine. Like, no, that's the end of this chapter. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah. So it's like there's a plague. They get out of the boats. And that's when they meet the youth that's like, please don't come here. You all are going to get hurt. What I thought was really cool about this whole chapter set was, I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to this city with a plague. They're all going to get infected. How could they not get infected? Like, how do they keep themselves from being infected? And we find out you don't just get infected from one person to the other. You have to be touched by the sower themselves. It's part of the demonic realm, the fantasy and all that, the world building. So I thought that was interesting. I like that world building a lot, that it's not necessarily contagious. You just can't touch the sower. But Luo Binghe has touched the sower too, but because he's the protagonist, he can't die. And Shen QingQiu is like, well, he's part demon, so it's not going to matter anyway. He's just going to absorb it. It'll be fine. It's like, oh, that I like that explanation too of how Luo Binghe is fine, but Shen QingQiu is not, right? I think that's really interesting. So we meet Yang Yizhan, and he's the son of the weapon shop owner. And he leads them to him. And Master Wu Chen is so sweet. I like him a lot. But the whole description, like, MXTX don't hold back. I don't know how the Donghua necessarily could censor this, because it's pretty disgusting, the idea that the disease decays your skin and like completely like starts out as 3 spots and then slowly like starts to fester and rot, which honestly, y'all, I got into this really, really horrible case of impetigo like 2 years ago, and it developed red patches all over my leg. And then I had this rash. You probably saw it in some of my reactions. I just had like a red rash all the way down, and it itched and it like blistered and bled. And this sounds a lot like it. And I'd rather not go back to that. So this part was pretty disturbing. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, so then what's so interesting too is that you have to avoid light and the elements, which oddly enough reminded me of the sun, moon, dew mushroom that you couldn't get exposed. It reminded me of the monsters that can't get exposed to light lest they decay. And then it talks about that if you try to leave the city, you'll decay even faster. So that to me seemed like a storytelling element that the story has put in place to keep Shen QingQiu from leaving Luo Binghe out of fear, right? Because the moment Shen QingQiu saw Luo Binghe, if he hadn't been infected and could leave that city, I think he would have hightailed it out of there. I genuinely think he would have been like, maybe we can go get some more people to help and solve this outside. You guys got this. I got to go step outside for a minute. But knowing that he has been infected, he can't leave the city. He's stuck there with Luo Binghe until they find a cure. And it's like, oh my God, what do we do? So yeah, It's fine. And so they try to figure out how the disease is transmitted, what they need to do. And so they're trapped there until they figure out how to find a conclusion. Now, Mu Qingfang seems to know, he's doing all these experiments, which we'll talk about here in a second, to try to find a cure and everything and to get more victims. And so Shen QingQiu, I like Shen QingQiu having the conversation with Yang Yizhan, trying to get him to go pester Liu Qingge and get to make him a disciple. The sad thing is the kid's dad's dead. So it almost seems like Shen QingQiu is being really kind. And he's like, hey, why don't you go talk to Liu Qingge and become his disciple, and then you can come back to the sect with us rather than stay in this city of death. Since the weapon shop owner and his dad are like gonna die and be dead. So yeah, I really hope that Yang Yizhan comes with them and comes back and is Liu Qingge's disciple. I very much in this chapter got from Modao Zushi a kind of Chang vibe from him, which is interesting. So I like it. I like Liu Qingge a lot. He's very, very tsundere and very much like, I don't need a disciple. I'll just fine. So I'm very curious to see if Yang will end up going with them or not. But yeah, also, I'm not going to lie, the big black cauldron, the big iron cauldron with the fire underneath it, boiling and making the food reminded me a little bit about a giant cauldron cooking some other human body parts and Heaven Official's Blessing. It was giving me those vibes. Especially in a city where people are decaying and possibly cannibalizing. So I thought that was an interesting little reference that MXTX could have drawn upon later. But I do like the idea Shen QingQiu kind of talks about here, where everybody is all barely hanging on, trying to live. So him coming out of nowhere as this big, impressive looking cultivator, they're just like, well, we've seen your kind here and you all have died. So it's almost like the city comes together in this moment, but it's like in the midst of tragedy and disaster. It's kind of like when you go to a disaster relief area and everyone's all kind of congregated together in this unified front, even though there's like all this death and destruction around them. It kind of felt like that same, the rhythms of the city were thrown off and there was this big communal meal trying to save lives. And I think it's interesting. I relate so much to Shen QingQiu. I relate so much to him over the course of this story. So a lot of his reactions to things, I'm like, I would have the same reaction. I would be like all about it. So the sower walks past him and crashes into him. And he's like, oh my God, he realizes all too late who it is, right? And for a second, when he went to chase them, he realizes mid-chase, he feels the itch on the back of his hand. And he's like, this limb is really plagued with misfortune. It's the arm that he'd used to get the poison from Elder Skyhammer. And now it was infected with the disease. And he notes that it was the hand that clicked starting in the novel. So he's like, I wish I could chop this all off. And I was like, dude, don't say that, because as you say later on, it gets chopped off by Luo Binghe anyway. So go be counting your chickens before they hatch, Shen QingQiu. But I loved that description. That description was so good. It was such a good moment. So then Gong Yizhao shows up. And he's like, oh, well, we were ordered to investigate the city, but I'm not leading a scouting party. The leader is someone else. And Shen QingQiu's like, well, why wouldn't it be you? In the OG novel, you're the one destined to be the leader, but not now, not in this case. So they leave to go and try to find the hunchbacked figure, and they go into this 3-story building. And I'm not going to lie, when they entered the 3-story building, the brothel, instantly, my mind went to Modao Zushi. And so some Modao Zushi spoilers for here that are going to be there till I'm done raising my hand. I instantly thought with the brothel of Yao's mother and of the brothel where Daddy Jing is. I thought about that. I thought about the brothel and seeing all the corpses, which is really terrifying. And we'll talk about the corpses here in a minute, of the women grooming herself, like donning her best clothes to meet her death. I thought it was interesting. We'll talk about it here in a second. But the other thing with Modao Zushi that I was talking about and thinking about in the moment of the reaction was when the Yiling patriarch, Wei Wuxian, shows up to punish Chow, to punish him in the big temple house, and Lan Wangji shows up, and Lan Wangji is like, what's become of you? What are you doing? Why are you in Chang, like, torturing this man? Like, I instantly thought of that, only now, instead of Lan Wangji showing up and kind of being appalled that Wei Wuxian is being this badass Yiling patriarch, we have Shen QingQiu showing up, being appalled that Luo Binghe is here as this badass patriarch. So it's like just, you see the influence, and I was like, oh no! But it's different vibes, because from Modao Zushi, you have the angle of it's from Wei Wuxian's point of view. So you're like, yes, he's a badass. He's come back from the dead. He's shown back up. And then you're like, you kind of feel the empathy of, you know, Lan Wangji realizing, like, what have you become? Why are you doing this? You're not Wei Wuxian from before. And now we have Luo Binghe coming back, being terrifying, but being very cordial and cool and coldly cordial. And Shen QingQiu being like, alert, 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 red flags, something's wrong. Ah! And it's a lot more tense and anxious, I feel, than the Modao Zushi scene. So I'm like, ah! So yeah, into Modao Zushi for spoilers. But what I was going to say was, I think that there's two things from the brothel and him entering the brothel building. One is the idea of him seeing all the women dressed up. And to me, it was like Shen QingQiu kind of like, you know, sighing in sorrow and thinking of them, like almost like he's like giving them a little moment of reverence. And also, I don't know if it's Shen QingQiu kind of connecting to the female characters like he has been throughout the story. I don't necessarily think that makes Shen QingQiu feminine by any means, him connecting with all these women characters, but I feel like it just shows his kindness that he's thinking of them and, you know, kind of feeling sad for them dying and trying to like put on this face amidst death, which he can actually relate to because he thinks he's going to have to keep putting on this face amidst his impending death. So he can relate to the women in this moment a lot. But not only that, I also kind of felt like this was symbolically the book saying like, oh, you think that, and my dog is being ridiculous. No. But it also felt like it was the story saying, oh, you think Luo Binghe is going to have this harem full of women. No, they're all corpses. That's all a dream. That's all gone. It's like, so maybe it's a two-fronted symbolism. Maybe. We'll see. But of course, it's the sixth door, right? And then the first words we hear out of Luo Binghe's mouth is, it's no trouble. So Shen QingQiu's like, shit, he's here. He's right here. And then he turns around and they're facing each other for the first time in 3 years. And the system's like, oh, hey, there's Luo Binghe. We're all back. Great. Thanks. I hope you all enjoy the service. All the installations are updated. Everything's great. We're back to normal operation mode. Everything's running smoothly. And Shen QingQiu's like, what? Excuse me? And the first thing he says is like, oh, Shizun. So Shen QingQiu's like, I'm screwed. I'm screwed because this man hates me and he hates me. He wants to kill me. I'm screwed. And the thing is, I love that he tells Gongji, he's like, I can't exonerate myself. I stabbed him and kicked him into the abyss. I mean, I had to do it, but I can't say anything about it. I did it. So, and the thing about it is it's very much how Shen QingQiu described Luo Binghe with this silky, soft voice. You know, what's interesting is it's a totally different dynamic because you have Lan Wangji and Modao Zushi, who's very stoic and calm and cool. And there's a passion underneath brimming, but it's just very it's very reserved and like protected and walled. And then you have Hua Chong, who is just very open about his feelings, very open, right? But he's also very cautious and reserved and respectful. Luo Binghe is not either of those things. He is, you can tell he loves Shen QingQiu, but he's pissed. And he's also being kind of catty and kind of like, hey, how's it going? I'm not going to let you know that I'm suffering inside. You don't need to know that. It's like, ah! So, I think that Luo Binghe, the way he talks, Luo Binghe obviously is still in love. He's still in love with Shen QingQiu. But here's the thing that's the fog of misunderstanding. He thinks, I'm sure, he thinks that Shen QingQiu hates him. And that he pushed him down the abyss because he's a demon. Because of his demon blood. This misunderstanding bullshit! Because it's just like, if you two talked it out, and the thing that they can't, this is the problem. It's like, Luo Binghe thinks that Shen QingQiu hates him because of his demon blood, and that he's been ignoring him. Now, Shen QingQiu didn't know he was alive, so he can't be mad at him for that. Shen QingQiu believes that Luo Binghe hates him. They both think that each other hates him. They think that each person hates each other, when that is not the case. They love each other. They just haven't been able to tell that to the other person or find a way to communicate that. They both think each other hates each other. And I'm like, if Luo Binghe talked to Gong Yi and asked him about it, I'm sure Gong Yi would be like, no, he loves you, dude. What? And if Shen QingQiu would give Shen QingQiu all the time of day, Shen QingQiu would be like, no, I think that you guys kind of love each other. But neither of them are listening to one another. And it's the most angsty thing ever. Because Shen QingQiu can't tell Luo Binghe, I had to kick you into the abyss because I died and I'm in a novel and this isn't real. He can't say that. And Luo Binghe has no way of knowing it unless they communicate and talk to one another. So my thing is, MXTX is good about at some point, the characters usually have a moment of the miscommunications all coming out into the open and them talking through it. MXTX is really good about that, but the thing that concerns me is those are in her later works. This is her first work. So she maybe she had time to workshop that for Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, and that doesn't happen here. So I don't know if that's gonna go down or not. I'm hopeful that these two goons are gonna like end up stuck in a cave or stuck in like, you know, in between, like they're stuck on a train, they're stuck in a cave, they're like stuck in a prison cell together or a coffin. And they have no choice but to talk to one another and then explain the situation because they need to just sit down and talk. But they don't have time to do that because there's all this junk going around and there's all these other people around and it's not just the two of them. I need the two of them to be alone and talk this shit out. Which, from the last chapter and where it ends, they might just be about to do that. But it's only volume 2. That's the problem. I'm like, oh, they've already met each other already. They're talking. They're gonna figure this out. It's gonna be right as rain. But no, this is only volume 2 of 4. And it's the beginning of volume 2 of 4. So I don't think we're getting things resolved anytime soon. I'm like, shit. So yeah. So he's like, oh, Shizun. And then Shen QingQiu can't say anything. And Luo Binghe strolls over and says, it really is Shizun. And Shen QingQiu's like, I am above the guillotine. I just have to face my fate. He's like, there's nothing I can do. I can't, what am I going to apologize for? He's like, what can I say? He's like, I don't want to, I don't want to disgrace Luo Binghe with a half-assed apology. He's not going to do that. We see Luo Binghe, and this is the other picture. He looks damn good. 3 years have done him well. He's like, looks broader and older. Yeah, I could see why Shizun would be a little bit, Cucumber Bro would be a little bit thrown off by that. You think? Mm-hmm. But yeah, but Shen QingQiu, of course, he's like, oh, I've had plenty of time to mask how terrified I am by just having this resting Shizun face. You'll never know. I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like Luo Binghe is going to push Shen QingQiu to drop the front and confess how he really feels inside. I don't know if that's going to be intentional on Luo Binghe's part or if it's just going to happen throughout the story, but I feel like he's going to push Shen QingQiu to actually talk about what he feels like, and that's going to lead out to a confession. But again, we're only at the start of the volume. We got a long way to go, right? So, also, the height difference! Like, they were once on equal, like, things, and now Luo Binghe is a little bit taller than Shen QingQiu. I'm like, oh, that height difference getting in there, too? Yep, yeah. And the more this chapter went on, all I could think of, the more I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, Shen's a bottom. Yeah. Like, Luo Binghe is that, like, scary top that you're like, oh my god. But the thing of it is, he's kind of like a puppy. He seems like a puppy dog on the one hand, but he also seems like a puppy dog that is very not happy with you not apologizing. And I'm just like, in my head, I was like, Shen, just apologize. Just talk to him. Tell him you didn't mean it. Tell him you're happy to see him alive. Say something. And he won't say anything. And I feel like by the end of the chapter, that's why Luo Binghe is like, you gonna say something? You have anything to say? After all these years, you're avoiding me. Why aren't we talking? And I'm like, I know. Yeah. So, of course, Luo Binghe, all of the disciples, they're all convinced that Shen QingQiu is a terrible person, that he's done Luo Binghe wrong, and that it felt like, have you ever seen the movie White Christmas? It's an old movie in the US from like the 1950s. It's White Christmas. And it takes place like right after World War II. And in the movie, there's like towards the climax, there's, you know, in every romance movie, there's always a miscommunication that leads people to think the wrong things. And in White Christmas, the leading lady, she hears something about the leading man, Bing Crosby's character, and she thinks that he's an awful person. She's like, I can't believe he would do that. What an awful person. Nope. Mm-mm. And she gets mad at him, and she tries to, like, stay away. She's like, no, it's fine. And the people she talks to thinks he's a bad person as well. And they're like, what a terrible person. Well, then you come to find out he's not a terrible person. It was all a misunderstanding. And then she's like, oh my God, he really wasn't like that? Oh. I feel like Luo Binghe is Rosemary Clooney in White Christmas, that thinks Shen QingQiu is mad at him for his demon lineage, and that's not the case at all. But he's convinced the Huanhua Palace the same thing, and they're all mad except for Gong Yi, who knows the truth of it all. And eventually it's all going to come out. Eventually it's all going to come out and be revealed, but we're not there yet, and this angst is going to be the end of me. So yeah, Gong Yi is the only one that's like, how about we act normal? Now, what's interesting about all this is that Wan Yu is there. And Wan Yu, she's like, you know, that Liu Xiong, that scoundrel harmed him. You know, he did all of this to help us. And that's when they find out that Luo Binghe had taken out the sower. Now, Luo Binghe has been infected as well. And Shen QingQiu, he can't help himself. He says, oh, you were infected. And he's like, oh, it's just a minor wound. All that matters is everyone is safe. And Shen QingQiu's like, of course you would say that, you know. But he says for a moment, he could almost believe the individual was still that bleeding, grass-loving little lamb. But that's when the disciples are like, oh, I suppose that you're overjoyed that he's infected. And Shen QingQiu's like, well, who the fudge are you? And the thing about it is, Shen QingQiu, because he's staying in character, doesn't respond to them by saying, no, why would I want him infected? He doesn't stand up to them because that's not proper and in the moment. And instead, Gong Yi has to tell him to be quiet. But Shen QingQiu is like, there's no point in me telling them off because they've already been brainwashed by the male lead, and so he doesn't let it known that he has the spots as well. And then Wan Yu says, this is all our fault. If you hadn't protected us, this wouldn't have happened. And so Shen QingQiu is like, okay. He's like, he's already infiltrated Huanhua Palace and convinced all these people to follow him as expected of the male lead, right? And so he's like, if Luo Binghe had to let others drag him down or be injured for their sake, it was definitely part of his own design or plan. No need to ponder. Don't you know that's the fastest way to farm a righteous reputation and favor points? Now, the thing that's interesting is that it seems that Shen QingQiu believes that this is all part of Luo Binghe's plan to get favor. But I don't think that that's it. I think the reality is that Luo Binghe, he has taken that kindness from Shen QingQiu and just paid it forward. The thing that's so frustrating is Luo Binghe has this self-loathing of himself and believes that Shen QingQiu hates him because of his demon blood. And he's like, well, all I can do is just be kind like my Shizun has been to me, even though he doesn't love me anymore. And I'll just keep on trying to live good by his example. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah. And he explains the purpose of the sowers. Now, the one thing where they were talking about gathering all the people together and then the sowers would infect them and then the demons would eat them, he makes a point to say, oh, well, but Luo Binghe's bloodline, they're above such things, so they would never cannibalize and eat other people. They're not like that because, I mean, which is a great thing because, you know, just think of how girls would feel if they had to kiss somebody like Luo Binghe who had like human corpses on their breath. I mean, that would be horrible if you had to kiss him. Like, who would be thinking about that? Kissing him right now? Who knows? I'm like, oh my God. You oblivious peacock! But yes. So, in any case, we go back to reality and Wan Yu's like, oh, well, so you knew about it as well. Well, Luo Shizong just guessed the identity of the culprit a while ago, and now he explained this relevant information to us, and they all like look at him like, but I don't think Luo Binghe is considering having Wan Yu in his harem. I don't think they have that type of relationship. I think he just views her as a friend, and he's not interested in her like that. And then, because Luo Binghe then says, everything I know was taught to me by Shizun. And Shen QingQiu's like, I get a very yandere vibe from Luo Binghe, if I'm being honest. I get a very yandere vibe from him. Like this mixture between a bad boy and a puppy. And this combination, in Shen QingQiu's defense, I'm all for. But I don't know if Shen QingQiu is ready for Luo Binghe to be a yandere for his Shizun. I don't know if he's ready for that. I'm not ready for it. I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm like, oh boy. Okay. But he's like, he didn't want to waste any more time. So he's like, well, I need to borrow this corpse to study. And the thing that's so frustrating is Shen QingQiu just acts like nothing's wrong. He acts like they haven't been separated for 3 years after what happened at the Abyss. He's just like, hey, I need to borrow that corpse. We got some stuff to do. Can we just get on with this? And he tries to just treat it so professionally. And Luo Binghe's like, sure, everything you say I'll just do. I'll get it exactly the way that you want it to, Shizun. And Shen QingQiu's like, sure, great, awesome. I'm like, you should be taking this time to talk to him and get connected back with him, Shen QingQiu. What are you doing? No, instead he's just trying to save his own skin. So then Gong Yi explains everything that's been happening about him coming to the palace. And the thing that's so interesting is that Gong Yi's been kicked out of his place, his pedestal, by Luo Binghe, which seems like Shizun thought it was going to happen eventually, right? He talked about that at the Immortal Alliance conference, that it eventually was going to happen, right? But then Gong Yi says, he's like, my master thinks very highly of Luo, but they don't call each other master and disciple. But the way he treats him, he's already no different from a succeeding heir. So that also kind of goes into this idea that Luo Binghe told Meng Mo, he's like, nobody is my master but Shen QingQiu. So he's sticking by that, but the Huanhua Palace Master thinks that Luo Binghe is going to take it over. And Shen QingQiu's like, well, this is exactly how it went down in the novel. The only exception is, in the novel, Luo Binghe originally kills the master, and here he's kind and gains his favor. So it's like Shen QingQiu is not aware that his act of kindness is causing all of these great things to happen. He has no clue. And I'm like, dude. But he's like, why would Luo Binghe be unwilling to return? And maybe it's because Shen QingQiu had wronged him. And his brainwashing skills weren't just talk. He saw how the disciples blindly and fastidiously followed him. He knew exactly where Luo Binghe stood with the Huanhua Palace. Yep. But the thing of it is, I don't think it's just necessarily his brainwashing. I think it's genuinely that Luo Binghe is a nice person and he just gravitates people towards him. Now, I'm sure that the plot and the whole Halo and Golden Finger thing has something to do with it as well. But like we've seen, Gong Yi's kind of immune to it as well. So, So anyway, Gong Yi's like, okay, well, I'll try to like clear up the matter with them. It's fine. And poor Shen QingQiu, he's so like just distraught over this. He's like, what do we do? He's like, I've painstakingly tried to build up this reputation of being a good person, But if Luo Binghe and his sect tell them like that I lied and that I tried to kill him, it's going to ruin my reputation. And then what do I do? Like Shen QingQiu is instantly thinking of the worst case scenario and relatable, but I'm like, I don't know if it's going to go down that way. Right? He's like, I can't justify or exonerate myself. And then Gong Yi's like, I don't know what happened in that gorge, but I don't think you would harm your own disciple. And so, as he said this, Gong Yi Zhao was thinking back on their meeting in the Bailu forest and remembering the things that Shen QingQiu had accidentally let slip and the way he affectionately gazed upon the monster. So let's talk about that. The monster, I'm like, the monster gazed at the mushroom and its eyes were blazing. These are just crackpot theories. Did somehow Luo Binghe learn about Shen QingQiu's actions through the monster? Did he go back to the demon realm? Like, is that monster gonna like tie back to all of this somehow? I'm really curious about it. But meanwhile, Shen QingQiu is like, well, we're both cannon fodder and this is bound to happen. So of course we would sympathize with each other's plight. And I'm like, that's not it, Shen QingQiu, damn it. So, but they both have reached this mutual understanding. The thing that's so funny about all of this is that Shen QingQiu and Gong Yi, they form this like mutual broship. They're like, hey, we're both, it's kind of like him and Sheng Qinghua. Like Shen QingQiu and Sheng Qinghua and Gong Yi Zhao, they all form this like brotherly camaraderie, platonic friendship. And Luo Binghe is jealous of Gong Yi because he thinks that they're together. I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, they're trying to figure out. I liked the fact that Liu Qingge was harvesting these manly macho men. I don't know what to make of that, but it's ridiculous. The idea they have these burly macho men tied up, that he just grabbed whoever he saw. I'm like, is Liu Qingge attracted to big burly men? Is he gonna hit on Mo Beijun? Is Mo Beijun and Liu Qingge gonna be a thing? I don't know, but he seems to gather them all up pretty quickly. I also like the idea that MXTX is kind of subverting gender expectations because you have these big burly men that have been gathered for these experiments, and Shen QingQiu talks about how all of the methods and madness that Mu Qingfang is doing would make them scream like girls, quote unquote. So I feel like you have these big macho men, but the moment these experiments start happening, they all freak out and panic and act all like just absolutely ridiculous. And so it seems like it's subverting gender expectations, and I think that's kind of cool that MXTX goes on a tangent about it. So then Shen QingQiu tells them that Liu Binghe is back and Luo Binghe is back, and Liu's the only one that has a reaction. He's just like, didn't he die? And Shen QingQiu's like, you're one to talk because you should have died too. And he's like, no, it's a long story. When we go back, I'll tell you all about it. And so then they talk about Mu Qingfang and all of the contents and everything that he's got, and he's trying to experiment. And then he starts to have a flare up. And he's like, sit here and wait. And then I like the foreshadowing where he's like, wait for what? For Luo Binghe to show up at their door? And Shen's like, I'm going to go with you. And he's like, no. He's like, you'll be a hindrance. He's like, have you taken your medicine today? Was it on time? And he's like, well, of course I did. And he's like, why do I have to stay back here? And then we find out that there's suddenly protagonist satisfaction points plus 100. So the first satisfaction points of the series, now that it's been rebooted, I'm like, him staying back. What's interesting at this point is that the system didn't tell him why he received satisfaction points. It's like the system's not going to tell him every time why he does it. So now the question is, one, did he receive the satisfaction points because Luo Binghe got a moment alone and realized he was happy that Shen QingQiu was there? Or two, is he getting the satisfaction points because Luo Binghe has realized that Shen QingQiu is now alone in the hotel or in the room and that he's going to be able to come see him and nobody's going to be interfering? So the fact that Shen QingQiu stays behind allows Luo to come to him, which allows the satisfaction points to happen. Hmm. And so Shen QingQiu tries to tell him not to touch any part of the sewer. And so he's like, when you come back, I have something very important to discuss with you. He's like, you have to come to my room without delay. And he's like, comradeship is priceless and fraternal love supreme. 1,000 days are spent training troops for the sake of one moment. Master Liu, you must shield me. He's like, you have to come back and protect me from Luo Binghe. And I was like, oh my God. So then the Wu Qin guy talks about how that the demon realm's been quiet for so many years. And it seems like a resurgence. And he's like, yeah. He's like, and the Sower's a lot stronger than they used to be. And he's like, Luo Binghe should have remained in the Endless Abyss for 2 more years, but he's broken out early. Why is this? How could this be an omen? How could this be good? So I thought he said something about the mushroom, but I guess he didn't. I guess he didn't say anything about it. So Liu hadn't yet returned. And so Shen went to the 2nd floor of the inner courtyard and he couldn't sleep. So he sat at the table and he was thinking of both Luo Binghe being this little lamb, calling him Shizun, but then thinking of the Black Lotus. I love him calling him a Black Lotus, that he was drenched in unease because he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's like, it's like a sexual awakening, but also a horror movie. And then they knocked twice on the door. And it's like this little just knock. And he's like, oh, Liu. And the way he said that line, Liu, I've been waiting for you all night. I'm like, that sounds pretty suggestive, Shen QingQiu. The fog of misunderstanding is going to have Luo Binghe thinking that you have a harem with all of these men. That's not true. He's like, well, hello, Shizun. And it's like, oh my God. It's like a horror movie in this moment of him just coming out of the shadows saying like, hello, Shizun, like, who you hanging out with? Gongyi, Liu? And Shen's like, I don't like any of these people. Not in the way that you think I do. So I thought he mentioned, I could have swore they talked about the sun, moon, dew mushroom. I could have sworn towards the beginning they talked about it, but maybe he didn't mention it. I thought it was towards the beginning. Because, yeah, no. We had chapters 31, 32, and 33. I could have swore he brought him up, but I guess not. It's just like, I just don't know. Yeah, because the 3 of them go together, and there's the Lo and the Hang River. Yeah, it's interesting they have 3 fronts. So my question too is, did Shang Hua Qinghua stay back at the Sang Chao Peak, or was he in the 2nd group? I just don't know. But yeah, this chapter set, I've talked for an hour about it. Oh my God. I am so floored, and the angst is gonna be real. Oh my God. I honestly, I don't think I'm gonna be able to wait. I'm gonna wait till I get to the comments from the last week's chapter set, but other than that, I don't think I'm going to be able to wait. I think I'm going to have to keep going. So yeah, I am so enthralled. Volume 2 started out with a bang. There's plagues. Luo Binghe is back already. He just shows up, and I'm like, Shen QingQiu, I don't know what to do with my hands. So, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon next week with chapters 34 through 36 of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. Bye!